Alderman Braithwaite. Here. Alderman Nguyen. Alderman Wilson. Here. Alderman Holmes. Here. Alderman Tindem. Here. Alderman Grover. Here. Alderman Rainey. Here. Alderman Burrus. Alderman Fisk. Here. 9-0.
We have a quorum. Welcome to the Monday, October 17th, 2011 meeting of the Evanston City Council. First on the agenda is Mayor's public announcements, and I am delighted to announce that it is Rotary World Polio Day, and I have a proclamation. Whereas Rotary International, founded on February 23, 1905 in Chicago, Illinois, is the world's first and one of the largest nonprofit service organizations. And whereas the Rotary motto, Service Above Self, inspires members to provide humanitarian service, encourage high ethical standards, and promote goodwill and peace in the world. And whereas there are more than 100 Rotary Club members in Evanston's 2 clubs, both of which sponsor service projects to address such critical issues as poverty, health, hunger, illiteracy, and the environment in their local communities and abroad. And whereas Rotary in 1985 launched Polio Plus and spearheaded the global polio eradication initiative with the World Health Organization, U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and UNICEF to immunize the children of the world against polio. And whereas polio cases have dropped by 99% since 1988, and the world stands on the threshold of eradicating the disease. And whereas the contributions, fundraising, and volunteer efforts of Rotary Club members are providing much-needed operational support, medical personnel, laboratory equipment, and educational materials for health workers and parents. Now, therefore, I, Elizabeth B. Tisdall, Mayor of the City of Evanston, do hereby proclaim October 24th, 2011 as Rotary World Polio Day and encourage all citizens to join me and Rotary International in the fight for a polio-free world. And I would like to ask Paul Fischel, John Osterlund, Tom Swigert, Bernice Valentinas, and anyone else who's here from Rotary to please come and accept the proclamation.
No, I'm just getting out of the way for that.
I'm going to give it to you, Tom, not to Wally. City Manager, do you have presentations and announcements?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I do. First, I'd like to ask our Police Chief, Rich Eddington, to come forward and make an announcement about a donation that was recently made to the Police Department.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager, Mayor, Clerk Green, and Alderman. This evening, we want to recognize David Cherry and the Cherry Foundation for a donation of $15,000 to acquire a T3 electric scooter. You may have seen the T3 out and about over the last several years. This is a project that we've partnered with the Cherry Foundation, and one thing nice about this that I've really enjoyed is Mr. Cherry not only donated the money, he helped us with the research to select the vehicle, which shows a level of commitment of time and community involvement that you don't often see. We've used this vehicle from Howard Street to Ryan Field. It's increased our visibility, and also one thing that I'm particularly pleased about, not only does it promote public contact by the officer being out and available, it's a green solution. For every moment you see the officer out on the T3, that's not a moment in time that we're driving a Crown Vic. And so this is a huge win at many levels, not only a green solution, but also a solution for community contact. With that, I'd like to introduce David Cherry and publicly thank him for his assistance to the police department. Mr. Cherry.
Thank you. On behalf of our family, we're glad to purchase the second vehicle. I hear from the people who use it that it has excellent presence and that there's good reception. The officers enjoy using it. I think that's important. But most important, I think, is that the contact between officer and the public doesn't go via the squad car, right, Chief? No. And that's a very good thing. And so it's our pleasure again to do this. And thank you and good night.
Wait 1 minute, Mr. Chair. I did want you to know that I have a Mayor's Youth Advisory group at the high school, and they told me that one of the things they thought would help with better police ETHS relations was more use of, they called it a Segway, and I told them they were wrong.
Well, I think that we kind of view it as enhanced foot patrol.
Yes.
And we're hoping to do more of these. And I think that as the network expands, the response from the public, I think, will continue to be positive.
I'm sure it will be.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next, I'd like to ask Devon Woodard, our development officer, to come up and talk about a program we've had in place but are looking to revitalize as we get toward the end of the year. Folks would like to make contributions for tree donations.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, City Clerk Green, Manager BOBKIEWICZ. As part of our efforts to increase community support for city programs which help to make Evanston unique, I and the Parks Department are pleased to announce the expanded tree program. Beginning tomorrow morning, residents and community members can make a living gift to commemorate any special event, holiday, or loved one through one of our 3 opportunities. A new tree can be planted in any park or parkway in Evanston with a donation of $600. An existing memorial tree can be dedicated in Lat Arboretum with a donation beginning at $300 up to $600. And our newest program, the Urban Reforestation Program, allows any Evanston resident and community member to make a donation to restore the trees that we lose every year to storm damage, disease, and old age. And those gifts range from $25 and up. To make a gift through the tree donation program beginning tomorrow, anyone can go to the City of Evanston website, and on all of the parks pages there will be a link on the left-hand column saying support your parks. Once you go through there, you can choose any of those 3 programs, and it will take you to the forms that you would need to be submitted to the Parks Department. In addition to that, a similar link will also be created for the police and fire departments, respectively, to look at their needs across the city as well.
Questions? That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then finally, I'd like to ask ERIKA STORLIE, our interim citizen engagement division manager, to talk about a project that actually is Alderman Tendam's idea, and that was wouldn't it be great to get the community involved in a photography event? And from that, we have a day in the life of Evanston. And ERIKA, I'll let you take it from here.
So this is a project that we're very excited about, and we hope that it will become a quarterly event. So we're going to start with fall, but the idea of it is to create a photo story of Evanston. The project will run this Saturday, October 22nd.
ERIKA, you need to speak into the microphone for the TV audience.
This Saturday from the entire day. So if you are in Evanston this Saturday, take a picture of anything that you find commemorates Evanston or displays what you like about Evanston, or an activity or an event or just a lakefront, any kind of picture that in your mind, kind of typifies Evanston life. And then you can submit it by email to us. We're going to take all of the photos and put them on our website for everyone to see. We will have community partners review the photos and narrow them down to 32, which will then be selected to be put in a photo book that will be available for purchase by the community, as well as available online in the digital version. And I think I pretty much covered it. The website is cityofevanston.org/photo day, and that is it. Any questions? Okay.
And thank you to Alderman Tendam for coming up with this great idea. And Madam Mayor, that concludes the presentations and announcements.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is citizen comment. Each speaker has 3 minutes. And the first is Michael Drennan. Then Mike Vasilko and Junad Rizki.
That's nice. Hello, everyone. My name is Michael Drennan. I reside at 820 Oakton Street. Ms. Mayor and members of the council, I just want to say thank you again for putting aside the pressing issues of today to consider a bag ordinance for Evanston. An issue for our grandchildren, the continued presence of these bags blowing about our streets, snagging branches and power lines, clogging our drains, and drowning our oceans reminds us, do something, quickly. So join me in giving thanks to the Environment Board. The community sent them something of a trick question this spring. Should we tax this pollution away or ban it outright? Education and a subtle change in behavior will help clean our waterways, lessen the trash at landfills and transfer stations. Bring your own bag. So, regardless of whether the Environment Board brings you a complete ban, an ambitious goal by any measure nationally, or perhaps something more modest along the lines of a fee, avoidable, mind you, that currently, if we calculate by the number of shopping-age adults in Evanston, we're looking at about 25 million plastic bags a year, about 2 million paper bags a year. And how we manage those, by fee, by ban, and either way, by an education as to the cost we derive from their use every day for our children and our grandchildren. I hope you'll join me this season in saying thank you to a board of citizens that has helped us move along the path to sustainability. Good night.
Thank you.
Mike Vasilko, 2728 Reese Avenue in Evanston. Over the past few weeks, I have heard members of the council and city staff say things to the effect that debt is not evil, and things like a certain amount of debt is okay. And although I would agree with those statements on their face value, they need to be put into context. It's okay to borrow money to buy a car or a house or to do some home improvements if you have the money and the means to pay it back. The average citizen must look critically at their individual situation in order to make this kind of an investment. The average citizen can't march into his or her employer's office and tell them that we're going to be giving you a 8% raise without the employers agreeing to it. Yet, here we are again, deep into the budget debates, and it seems there is a foregone conclusion that property tax increases and other taxes and fees, totaling, as I understand it, close to 8% above last year, will be levied against the citizens of Evanston. Evanston is still one, if not the highest taxed communities in all of the North Shore, and we still keep raising our taxes, 3% last year, as I understand it, up to 8% this year. How much higher will it go next year? In Evanston's case, taxes and fees keep going up, and concurrently, the total of the debt also, and the underfunded pension obligations also keep going up. Responses to FOIA requests state The total debt and pension obligations in the spring of 2010 was $453 million. As of the spring of 2011, the same total was $479 million, a 6% increase over 2010. A month or two ago, the Cook County Treasurer's Office reported Evanston's debt and underfunded pension obligations to be $536 million. I don't know where the discrepancy is, but if the county numbers are correct, Evanston is well past or approaching the $500 million mark in the red. The simple point is that no one should minimize the serious condition of the city's debt. Debt may not be evil, but Evanston's debt cannot be characterized as okay, because it's not okay. It's somewhat out of control. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, Mr. Vasilko raises a number of different debt issues, debt numbers. My understanding is the final number that he gave, that 500 million number, was for all taxing jurisdictions. So that, I think, is the discrepancy. But just to make that clear.
Okay, tonight I want to speak about what I consider an unethical budget process. The city has grossly misinformed the public as to the real property tax increase. Nowhere in the executive summary is the total property tax increase stated of 7.91%, which is 8%. Comments and statements like 3% property tax increase on the general fund have been used continually, I believe, to mislead the public and the press. Those that might want to discount my points or raise claims that they're not valid should look at the headlines in both local papers, the Round Table and the Review, that said 3% property tax increases. Many residents I've talked to in the last few days tell me there's a 3% property tax increase, which just isn't the case. It's 8%. It is clear that the news here is really getting bad, and things are probably getting worse. The general fund is basically being cannibalized by the other funds. Very unpleasant decisions are ahead. The 8% property tax increase this year, given next year's problems, will translate possibly into over a 16% increase. A 24% increase in 2 years is not acceptable, nor is it sustainable. The city, I believe, is going to spin this as a 3% increase on everyone's total property tax bill. Using that logic, by 2013, a total increase of 10% will be on everyone's property tax bills. The reality here, for Wally to hold the budget at the 3% property tax increase, the city would have to have laid off 20 additional employees this year, a total of 30 positions. By the 2013 budget, it would appear the city would have to lay off an additional 50 employees. At Saturday's budget hearing, I heard Wally asking, or should I say pleading, for the council and the mayor to give him some direction. I think Wally is competent enough to take direction, but I believe the council and mayor can't give this direction, and I'm afraid we're moving faster to insolvency. I'm just going to make a few quick comments on what I see here in tonight's discussion. Where will the city get $4.5 million to fund the Tiger Tooth capital when we can't even, basically are trying to get $750,000? The marketing study of Robert Crown, I didn't have time to read. It's an enormous document, but basically what that said I thought was very interesting. One of the things the marketing people were saying that they were going to melt the ice sheet in the summer and use it for volleyball, lacrosse, and other things, which the city is now renting, wanting to rent something at the Ecology Center. I thought that was pretty interesting. So I think there are really many issues here. I'm very concerned here, really, how these items are all for discussion, for actually direction tonight. I want to know if council members have really read these documents carefully and really looked at any of this that they're going to quickly approve as a consent agenda. I mean, I bet you nobody's read any of these things. I believe also Robert Crown will cost us money, a lot of money, in capital, because I don't believe any of these developers are going to give this to us for free. And I don't think we have the capital to even do it. So I think the council should carefully look at this. We've already spent $200,000 on this. If we approve the 143 tonight, that'll be a 0.5% property tax increase. $200,000 translates to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Andrew Harbaugh, Elizabeth Miller, Padma Rao, and B.K. Rao.
Good evening. My name is Andrew Hobaugh, and I'm a senior at Northwestern University and co-president of the Roosevelt Institute at Northwestern. The Roosevelt Institute is a think tank that partners with non-governmental organizations, community organizations, and even governmental organizations to do research on issues that we are concerned about and they're concerned about. Over the last 2 years, we have been doing research on a bag ordinance, and we've also started a campaign at Northwestern to eliminate plastic bags and disposables on campus. Through this research, we've worked with members of the Environmental Board, Dick Peach, and Michael Drennan in the past on trying to figure out what is the best way Evanston can go in order to eliminate plastic bags and other one-use items, which is in line with the Evanston Climate Action Plan. And we're here tonight to voice our support for the 5-cent bag fee that is being recommended.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Miller, and I'm also a senior at Northwestern and a member of the Roosevelt Institute. As Andy said, we're here to voice our support tonight for the recommendation drafted by the Evanston Environmental Board. We believe that a fee will be a very effective way to change consumer behavior while still also giving them the choices that many people feel that they deserve when it comes to this issue. We also support the idea of having a 6-month education period, which is in the recommendation. We believe that it'll be necessary to educate people why this fee is being levied before actually just, imposing it. And we also support the reevaluation period after the 2-year sunset period to see if this is the proper, if further action should be taken. So again, we want to voice our support and hope that you will support it as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Padma Rao, 2246 Sherman Avenue. My comments have been reviewed and approved by my attorney. Did this council bother to look up any of the legal references that my attorney cited on August 8th? If you had done so, you wouldn't have behaved so improperly on September 26th. When this council voted for the Kendall project, it sentenced over 24 mature trees to death for no reason. So despite the city code, this council voted to deprive my neighborhood of over 24 oxygen factories, over 24 carbon dioxide removers, over 24 songbird homes, over 24 of the oldest living members of our community, and over 24 beautiful living links to our history. Why? When this council voted for the Kendall project, it imposed an alley plan that dumps traffic onto the narrowest street and endangers young children and other pedestrians. Why? According to the March 14th packet, the developer hired Holland & Knight to represent against the taxpayers' interests. But this council approved payments of tens of thousands of tax dollars to Holland & Knight, the last payments being included in the bills list for the August 8th, 2011 council meeting. When I pointed out that it is unethical for the law firm to represent against its current or former client, this council attacked me and tried to stifle all discussion of the matter. The mayor asked the city manager to make statements about Holland & Knight that are directly contradicted by the bills lists. Why? When I pointed out that the May 10, 2010 council minutes state that Alderman Fisk's son works for the same law firm, this council's attacks became even more hostile. One member rudely interrupted me and made the false claim that my pointing out this council's conflict of interest was an attack on another person. In reality, I'm concerned that this council's loyalties to another person interfere with this council's duty to act in the best interest of the taxpayers. Why does this council try to prevent me from expressing this legitimate concern? Why does this council keep trying to cover up the Kendall issue? Why does this council keep trying to cover up the conflicts of interest? Why does this council attack us in particular with such open animosity? Is it because of our ethnic background? Is it because of our religious beliefs? Whatever this council's personal issues and opinions may be, I won't stop criticizing your bad decisions and unconstitutional actions until you redress them. See you all next time.
Thank you.
B.K. Rao, 2246 Sherman Avenue. My comments have been reviewed and approved by my attorney. I came back to talk about the Kendall trees that will be killed thanks to the thoughtless way this council passed the resolution. Whether any of you like to hear it or not, the facts about the resolution and the way it was passed without a word of public discussion will be talked about. The fact that the developer hired Holland & Knight to sue the city remains a fact, and the fact that Holland & Knight received large sums of money from taxpayers through the city also remains a fact. The fact that Alderman Fisson works for Holland & Knight also remains a fact. The adverse effects of the resolution and the speedy way it was passed will not be ignored just because a certain member of your group doesn't want to sit here and hear about the pertinent facts. The fact, according to the Evanston patch, is that Alderman Fisk assured the developer's lawyer that she got the votes to push the resolution no matter what the citizens comment. Just because a certain member of yours breaks the rules and the mayor assumes the powers that she in fact doesn't have to control the substance of the citizens' comment doesn't mean the citizens are going to keep quiet about it. Sometimes people get carried away by their egos. A certain member goes too far as she thinks that she runs the city hall and hence can control free speech because she has been around here for too long. Her way of inward thinking might have worked during the dark ages when people believed that the sun revolves around the earth. Just a question for the remaining members who acquiesced in this kind of outlandish behavior from your own. Are you going to take any action against her? Simply implement the zoning code that no tree shall be cut unless proven absolutely necessary. Don't bully taxpayers. Your respects and disrespects to each other are your problems and should not interfere with your decisions affecting taxpayers. Trees have a right to live. Taxpayers have a right to speak. I shall return to speak. Thank you.
That concludes citizen comment. City Manager, we have special orders of business.
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of the council, several items this evening. First, an item that was postponed from a previous meeting. ERIKA STORLIE, our interim Citizen Engagement Manager, and Joe MCRAE, our interim Assistant City Manager, are here. We're here to make a report on the second quarter of 311. We continue to serve lots of folks. I think through this presentation this evening, you'll hear not only an update of what we've done, but I think also some improvements that we've been able to make in response to citizen suggestions. So with that, Mr. MCRAE, good evening.
Good evening. Madam Mayor, members of the City Council, City Clerk, City Manager. My name is Joe MCRAE. I'm the Interim Assistant City Manager. Thank you all for allowing me the opportunity to speak to you tonight regarding the second quarter report for 301. I'm happy to announce that we've been up and operational for over 6 months now. Very successful project, very successful rollout, and I want to give you some stats about how we're doing right now. I'm going to talk about call volume and service requests, and my partner, ERIKA STORLIE, the Interim Citizen Engagement Division Manager, will speak to you about process changes and some new initiatives that we're doing. Breakdown by quarter. As you can see, in all categories, really, business is going up. The total number of calls received for the first 2 quarters, the second quarter being the summer. So we're talking about June, July, and August, really. But as you look at comparison, first quarter we took over 31,000 calls total. Second quarter, 41,000. Year to date, about 72,000. We're on pace to be at about 140,000 for the first calendar year of operation, which breaks out to about 1.86 calls per capita. We projected to be around that 2 calls per capita number, so we're on pace to hit that. Calls handled are the actual calls that come in that we get to, that we answer and either provide the information or the service requests. Roughly, we handle about 92% of all calls that come into the center, and you can see that that number increased from 28,000 to 37,000. You can see the abandoned calls, which are the calls that we don't get to in time, and that's roughly about 8% of the total call volume that comes in. And that number increased as well, and that's something we need to monitor and watch. We're aware of that. We got to be more mindful of the time we take on the phone, answering calls, providing quality customer service. And service requests, which has been our steady increase throughout our 6 months of operations, going from 4,500 in the first quarter to 7,400 in the second quarter, with a total of almost 12,000 in the first 6 months. We have 5 top service requests, and these are the most consistent that are probably in our top 5 throughout the 6 months of operations. We're going to have our department directors come up and speak to the ones that are respective to their departments, but they are trash, missed recycling pickup, trash, missed pickups, trash, special pickups, graffiti, both in the public and private, on public and private property, and trees, particularly to storm cleanup, which was huge in this second quarter. So at this time, I would like to call up our Public Works Director, Suzette Robinson, to speak to recycling and trash missed pickups, and also the next slide as well for special pickups.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Alderman, and City Manager. I'm Suzette Robinson, the Director of Public Works. And this seems a little like deja vu. The first quarter, I think I was in position 1, 2, and 3 with the top items for 311 in terms of service requests. Our numbers have gotten a little better. They kind of go up and down based on the need. The amount of recycling and refuse pickup alike are very similar. We're in that we're coming with onesie, twosie type situations where we believe most of those requests are requests for service where people have put items out late after the truck has already gone by. And we really don't have a way of discerning that in 311. And we also end up with a little bit of a lag, which we have corrected from the contractor's view, in that they have now gone through 311 training themselves, and they will be getting their complaints or requests for services directly, because they'll actually have a seat and be able to see those complaints on a more regular basis. The recycling misstops mostly have to do with if we have a situation where a truck breaks down and we're not able to complete a route. It doesn't happen that often, but it does happen often enough that if we have 2 or 3 trucks go down, we are very tight equipment-wise, that it really does impact our ability to provide that service. So the recycling missed pickups are associated with items that have been put out late and equipment issues. The trash missed stops are, some of those are missed special pickups, and some of them are missed stops that are garbage stops that have been put out late as well. So we expect to see a little bit of a spike around for missed trash when we have bulk trash pickup, because the bulk trash pickup, we had quite a few requests that came in from that, and that will be reflected actually in the next quarter. You won't see that in this quarter. The special pickup is the third area. And those are requests for service. I mean, when that number is up, that's actually good. That's people calling in for removal of bulk trash, which we charge for. So that's a good request for service. So we would like to see that at number 1.
Alderman Burrus.
Yeah, thank you for the report. I was wondering if we could get more detail on where the recycling and the trash are being missed. So what areas of the city are we missing more, and more of a problem? That may also, I think, help the Director of Public Works target which different crews, and are there certain maybe areas that are tougher to do? I mean, parts of the community have really tight alleys, or you have garbage in the front, and some areas make it more challenging than others, quite frankly, to pick up. So I think it would be helpful to just kind of see that pattern. Thank you.
And Madam Mayor, Alderman Burrus, we have the ability through the GovQA system to plot maps. And we actually have looked at maps after the first quarter, and it really was citywide. Looking for the very issues you raised, looking to see if there were patterns. Again, all the issues that you just talked about. But we can provide in a Friday packet a copy of a map. We're working with the vendor. The maps are a little pokey looking, but certainly the information is still conveyed. So, Mr. MCRAE, Ms. Storley, we can get that in a Friday packet.
Absolutely.
We're ready to continue.
Up next, I would like to call Steve Griffin to speak to graffiti.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Alderman, City Clerk, and City Manager. Steve Griffin, Director of Community and Economic Development. I think most of you know we're very fortunate to have such a dedicated employee in Carlton Mims, who heads up our graffiti removal program. He's over 17 years with the city and just as dedicated and proactive as they get. Actually, but sadly, graffiti's a little bit up from last year. Thus far, we have 5,000 tags that we've taken care of this year, which that equals the total of the entire 10-month last fiscal year. However, about 7% of the calls that we get through or entries through 311 are through the 311 system. Of those 45 or 5,000, what we like about getting these calls, and it's something Carlton said to me, he believes graffiti breeds more graffiti. So we're out there getting it as quick as we can, and with more eyes in the community turning that in, we're able to arrest that as quickly as we can. So I would call this program that we've got quite proactive in that we have more eyes because of the 311 system citywide, and as Carlton is going out, he's spotting other spots as he's going to make a call and takes care of those. We've gotten a couple of good partners over the last couple of years. Matt Swinskotsky is one. His interrelationships with the Metro and CTA have been invaluable about getting quick turnaround there. And there's been a couple of negative episodes over the last 3 or 4 weeks, a couple of the viaducts that we were able to work with them and get that taken care of almost immediately. And the Public Works Department as well, about 3 years ago, they put a certain kind of film coating on the signage, and it makes it much easier to clean the graffiti off. And just a simple thing like that it really works well. And then, of course, the parks and the school systems do their own graffiti removal, but there's Carlton ready to help them when he can. So far, we've got a good program. We're very thankful for the 311 system as, again, more eyes on the problem. And again, in the words of Carlton, graffiti breeds more graffiti, so we want to get it as quick as possible. I'm happy to answer any questions about this program.
Alderman Burrus.
I'm the only one asking questions tonight. With the graffiti, can you talk about arrest or fines, or what are we doing to be proactive about the people that are tagging? And can we also have a map on that as well?
Yes, ma'am. We can get you the map. As far as we do have a strong relationship with the police department, where Carlton will take a picture of the tag, and there's certain tags and symbols that repeat offenders will use. So that's been a tool. We haven't caught them all. There's one that Carlton's looking for right now, as a matter of fact, I won't name. give them more publicity. But yeah, we have a pretty good relationship with the police and able to handle that.
Alderman Rainey.
You know, I don't think we take it seriously enough. You know, just now when you mentioned that Carlton's looking for somebody, there was a titter that went through the audience. I think it's really serious, and
Yes.
if people are always complaining about their taxes, if they knew how much it cost us every year
Yes.
to remove this graffiti,
Yes.
it damages some buildings. I mean, sometimes on brick it's damaging.
Yes.
And I think the time has come when we take it more seriously. We take it Carlton takes it seriously. He's out there breaking his neck cleaning it up. But I don't think the community as a whole takes it seriously enough. And I think additionally, some people actually feel it's a very productive means of expressing one's creativity, which I find obnoxious when you're not just, you know, drawing on your own property. So I would like to suggest, and I see a note here from the chief about we've put as a goal neighborhood safety and crime prevention. I think we should start offering a reward for turning in graffiti artists. And I can tell you one time in my ward, several years ago, there was some horrible graffiti. And I put out the word that I would give a $100 reward if we could find out who this person was. And I was able to give away the reward to 3 young girls who immediately turned in the artist, who had done hundreds of dollars of damage. So I don't think $100 is necessary, but I think $25 a vandal would be a great idea per ward.
I'll talk to the chief about that, yes, ma'am.
I'm talking to him right now about it.
Alderman
I just don't see how we can, it's a constantly recurring vandalism, and it's a constant in our budget. Thousands, tens of thousands of dollars are drained from the Community Development Block Grant Fund for graffiti. And it's a crime, and it's terrible, and I think we need to get on top of it instead of just complimenting Carlton about what a wonderful job he does removing it. Let's go after the people who do it.
Okay.
Thank you. Alderman Burrus.
As Alderman Rainey was talking about this, it just reminds me, earlier today I was having a conversation with a gentleman from AT&T who was talking about how many of their boxes have been tagged this year, that it's substantially up. And that might be a way to look at corporate sponsors for awards for the people that are tagging the graffiti. I mean, obviously, we don't have a lot of money here at the city, hence our budget discussions. But if we're looking at the companies that are getting tagged and they want this to stop as well, it may be a good outreach tool for Devon to talk about gifts to the city to the graffiti police.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And last but certainly not least, Doug Gaynor to talk about trees.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, Clerk Green, City Manager Bobkiewicz, Doug Gaynor, Director of Parks, Recreation and Community Service, and also Forestry. When you look at this graph, you can see that actually the curve starts going up in May, even though the bulk of the activity was in June, July, and August. It's very typical when spring comes about that we start receiving calls, and that's why you start seeing that swing. However, between June 21st and August 29th, we had 4 major storms and 14 minor storms. During that period of time, we brought in 38 full-time forestry and park workers, as well as a number of utility and public works employees to do the cleanup. That doesn't include the fire department or the police department when they're out and they see some tree limb that's blocking an alley or blocking a street, where they will move it to the side until one of our forestry or other crew members are able to dispose of it. The storm priorities that we look at right away and assess are trees down on homes, split trees, trees down blocking streets. If there's utility lines involved, contacting ComEd before we can remove those trees or limbs. Broken, split, or hanging branches in all public areas, trees or limbs down in alleys, limbs down on sidewalks in all public areas, and just general cleanup, chipping limbs, pruning, and repairing damaged trees, removing irreparable and damaged trees. During this past 3 months in this summer, we had to remove 106 trees. There were 113 trees blocking either the streets or the alleys. The total number of public trees affected in any manner were 1,349. Crews responded to 1,332 public and private locations. Some locations had multiple trees on sites needing work. And crews assisted with 90 private tree responses relating to the public right-of-way. And as you know, we asked all of the citizens to take any of the tree damage and put them in the parkway. And for that period of time, we picked up and removed those damaged limbs and or trees. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Alderman Burrus.
Could we get information on how the numbers, the response this year compares to the last 3 years on how many incidents we have, how many trees we had to cut, remove? Because I know this year, it seemed that the summer we had a lot of microstorms and a lot happened, and I think it would be helpful to get a sense of not just this year but over the 3 years, what is our response? That'd be helpful.
Alderman Rainey.
Mr. Gaynor, trees means only tree removal and tree repair. It doesn't mean I want a tree or take my tree away. Or...
This was primarily storm damage responses. During these storms and the cleanups, we pretty much stopped doing trimming or planting or anything else other than just storm cleanup.
But what I was wondering is, there's no record of calls that have to do with positive things about trees. That's the question. I mean, I didn't realize when I looked at this trees, all it meant was removing tree debris.
Thank you, Mr. Gaynor. I don't see any more lights.
I am ERIKA STORLIE, and I am going to continue on the rest of the presentation where Joe left off. So now that we've been going for 6 months, we've had a chance to evaluate how things are going, and as always, this is a work in progress, and we're striving to achieve the best level of service we can. So we've taken feedback we received and made some changes in response to that. One of the most noticeable things for callers will be that if you do call and ask for a specific person by name, instead of the 311 operator asking you if they can help you, they will now directly transfer you to the person that you are asking for. So that kind of relieves the bottleneck that some people found annoying. We've also re-recorded the initial welcome message so that when you call 311, you will get to a call taker much faster, and that has been well received. We also launched a mobile application that will work with our 311 system, and this went live earlier this month, and so far so good. If you have a mobile phone or a smartphone, you can download See-Click Fix from from the iPhone or the App Store for iPhone, Android, or BlackBerry. Or if you don't have a smartphone, you can still use seeclickfix.com. This application makes it very easy to submit requests for service through your mobile phone. It uses a GPS locator built into your phone to get your exact address. It's already pulled up the Civic Center here. You can also use the camera built into your phone to take a picture of whatever it is you're requesting service for, be it a pothole, what have you. It takes less than 35 seconds to submit a request for service using this tool, and we think that it will just give one more avenue for people to utilize the 311 service. And that is all for the second quarter report. Any questions?
Alderman Grover.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is, I guess, for both you, Ms. Storley, and Mr. MCRAE, is we've done a lot of outreach on 311. Do we have neighborhoods in Evanston that are underrepresented in the volume of calls that we're not reaching, they're not using the service? You can probably map where the calls come from. We get the ward reports. I'm wondering if if you have identified neighborhoods in Evanston that aren't using 311 the way you expect them to, and if we're going to do some specific outreach to those neighborhoods.
That's a great question. What I would say is that when we are tracking calls per se, we get the most information by tracking the actual service requests. And right now, there's a fair distribution of calls throughout the city. Everyone's kind of in the teens, I would say. I would say that we've done a great deal of research in terms of using different types of media to get to everyone. So some people read the newspaper, some people would prefer to have a magnet, some people, we've done a lot to try to outreach to everyone. As I've gone to the different ward meetings, I've gotten a lot of positive feedback in most wards that I've gone to, that they've utilized it either just in passing and tried it out, or they heard about it from someone. The word of mouth experiences are doing us the most good in terms of creating more opportunities for us to impress residents to a certain extent with service delivery. So I would say that that's still a work in progress, but thus far I haven't heard much in terms of individuals not being able to get access that would like to have more access.
So 311 participation seems kind of evenly utilized throughout the city then?
Kind of does, actually, right now, yes. Now, whether or not it's website, some people prefer to use the website, some people prefer to call, and like ERIKA was saying, we just rolled out a new mobile app that'll bring maybe a different demographic to the table as well. So,
Alderman Tandem.
Thank you. Going back to the beginning, the category of abandoned calls, what are you proposing, and how do you plan to lessen that as a percentage of the total calls?
That's a great question. We have to look at primarily what I would say is that as call volume goes up, we have to become more and more efficient in how we process calls. And so when people call, we have to provide quality customer service, but we also have to work through the process of getting the information that we need so that we can enter it in as a service request or provide them the information they need in a more efficient and effective manner, I think. And so we constantly train our individuals to, while providing exceptional customer service, to also be mindful of the fact that there are other calls in queue and that we have to get to those calls as well. And it's a balancing act, depending on the type of call.
Thank you. Alderman Braithwaite.
I have a question for Mr. MCRAE. Back in May, through the city manager's office, there was a phone blast that was made to the second ward. I was just curious to know if you're going to continue to do that, if it's something that you're experimenting with. What's the status?
We have that tool, the community mass notification tool. Right now we use it for emergencies primarily and community alerts when necessary. The emergencies, we utilize the 911 database. For non-emergencies, we utilize those individuals that have signed up for the program specifically. And so we use it as necessary. But it is a tool that we utilize as is needed.
Alderman Burrus.
Again, I'm a big cheerleader of 311, so thank you so much. What is the lowest call volume day? And have we looked at all of reducing hours on that low call volume day?
Yes, we have looked at that, and currently the least call volume day is Sunday, and as part of the 2012 budget, we have proposed an alternative scheduling for Sundays that will reduce I think our overall expenditure is somewhere around $30,000 annually.
I'm sorry, could you give us the number on how many calls, and if you don't know it, on Sundays?
I think it's less than 50.
There's a dramatic decrease on Sundays. And so what we're proposing of the $50,000 decrease is to 30,000 of that pretty much is the staffing on Sundays. And so what we're going to do is leverage the existing call takers that are at the police department. Since it's such a small volume, we think that will take care of it. Otherwise, people will just leave a message on Sundays. We feel confident that will still serve the community in a responsible way. The other $20,000 of the cut for 311 is costs we anticipated to be charged by the various wireless carriers, and those costs have not been as significant as we thought. So those are the two component parts in that $50,000 budget cut for 311.
Alderman Rainey.
Well, I think it doesn't quite make sense that that's the lowest call volume day. So I'm wondering if everybody understands that it's operative on Sunday. And could you give us the hours of operation on Sunday and Saturday as well?
7 to 7, 7 days a week.
7 to 7, 7 days a week.
And so that will continue. I think what we have done is it was not the full value of the cut, if I recall, that we did put some money aside for overtime so that if we do see some fluctuations, what we didn't talk about this evening was snow.
Right,
and what we've done is we put some money aside because we figure in our past experience with snow events know no time, space continuum. People will call whenever they need to call, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So we have money associated with that. We've already done some snow drills with 311 because we've never had a winter yet with 311, given that it started in March. So we've got some money set aside there. If we see the call volume, Alderman Rainey, grow on Sundays, and it's been very consistent at that under 50 number pretty much since day one. It is. I think the only time we've seen any spikes have been the weekends of the summer festivals. Not even then. And then I guess the only one was for weather. So again, the flexibility we have with the staffing model at 311, and it's in the police department, is that we can compel overtime if we need to for emergencies. And so we'd rather do that and be mindful to try to help the overall city budget, not to have people sitting there on Sundays if the demand doesn't warrant it. So we think that the budget proposal that is included in the proposed budget makes sense for next year.
I don't see any more lights.
I just turned mine on.
Oh, Alderman Rainey. Sorry.
Speaking of saving money, have we done an analysis of the economic value of 311?
Well, I think mostly anecdotal. We're hearing from our residents that they're happy that they can call the city once and get things done. So there's a value to our residents in that. There's certainly a value to reduce staffing. I think
that's where I'm going. I know everybody's happy with it, but how has it affected the bottom line?
Well, we reduced and eliminated positions in order to fund 311. So that has worked out the way we had hoped it would work out, and so that the staffing model that we have now with 311. With the absence of those other positions, the world has not come to an end, and we're able to deal with these services, we think, even more efficiently than the previous model with the positions we had to eliminate.
But we added positions. I mean,
Well, I mean, I think there's a fallacy sometimes in the community that this was some sort of net add to the budget 301, but the reality is it wasn't. We laid people off from their jobs in order to hire the positions. That was not the whole cost of the program, but it was about half to 2/3 of the program came from eliminating staff positions, and at least one position in the budget we're proposing for 2012. One of the reasons we feel comfortable recommending it for elimination is because much of that position's work has been taken over by 311, and that's in the forestry division.
I don't want to cause any trouble here. I just think at some point in time we should get a cost-benefit analysis of how 311 has saved us money.
Well, and I guess, Madam Mayor, Alderman Rainey, one of the ways it saved us money is because we eliminated all the positions we eliminated to get this up and running. So it's really taking money we were spending and spending it smarter. And I think the benefits come from that in the intangibles, which are people call us once and get things done. If we were only adding positions to do this, then I think then it's easier to say that cost benefit. But since we eliminated, and Joe, help me with the number.
It was somewhere in the neighborhood of about 8.
So there were 8 full-time equivalent positions eliminated. So people who were doing bits and pieces of this work, who are no longer doing it, were able to not only cover all of that work, but also all of the things that weren't easily done by calling the city of Evanston. I think it's something, as we get data that goes along, I mean, as you heard tonight, over 6 months we have a lot of data. After 1 year, after 2 years, I think we'll be able to answer your question a little bit more completely. I realize I'm not giving you the complete answer you're looking for, Alderman Rainey, but I think with additional time and additional data, we'll have that. But again, the reality is this was not an ad. This was something where we eliminated positions and then came up with other funding through other adjustments in the budget in order to do this. We're one of the few communities in America that created a 311 service without being a net ad. It was by reducing positions and making other cuts in the citywide budget in order to accommodate this cost.
Okay, now I really do not see any more lights.
Madam Mayor, we'll move on to the next presentation, which also was held over from a previous meeting. Rick Voss, the parking manager, is here at the council's request to talk about a new program we'll be rolling out over the next several months using technology to read license plates that will help us with our parking enforcement and ultimately our vehicle sticker operations in the city of Evanston. Mr. Voss, good evening.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, council members, City Manager BOBKIEWICZ, City Clerk Green, Ricky Voss, Administrative Service, Parking and Revenue Manager. This evening I'm going to be presenting a brief overview of a license plate recognition system that staff will be recommending to purchase during the next fiscal year. I'll make a presentation as brief as possible, and the information provided is by one manufacturer. However, the majority of the manufacturers are all based on the same conceptual and design, and therefore the information that you receive is accurate for the majority of the manufacturers that have submitted. If you see the brief agenda that I gave, will give you a basic overview, our hardware configuration, how we can use it for parking enforcement, the LPR results of installation or implementation, and reporting capabilities. The brief history shows that over the years it was really developed only about 15 years ago, primarily in Europe, and specifically, like it says, in England, initially for law enforcement and security. Over the last 8 years, it's really matured in the fact that the accuracy has increased in the rate and the reading. Parking enforcement applications have been induced and adopted, so which includes offshoots and street sweepers, snow plows, fixed license plate inventory, intelligent toll services, and a number of services through the program. Applications in all 50 states, throughout Illinois, specifically in Chicago. Chicago has an LPR units installed for law enforcement, parking enforcement, street sweepers, airport toll roads, fixed covert, and many more operations. Also, small and medium-sized municipalities have adopted, the latest being Downers Grove and Oak Park. This is just basically a mock-up of exactly how the equipment is affixed to any particular vehicle, where it shows how the cameras are mounted and how it's broken down to an outbox, gives a GPS positioning, and reports everything to a laptop computer. Most of it is the same design as the police departments have today. They're simple. They network both by wireless and have a backup thumb drive that can be used at any time. The USB download is actually really good for the very simple reason that we have a lot of areas within the city still that have hard spots for wireless to pick up, so therefore enforcement personnel would be able to use the thumb drive to upload any hot list or current information the morning before they go out. The solutions that I'm most interested, of course, is parking enforcement. It's been used in cities, universities, hospitals, street sweepers, which I'll address later on, airports, and snowplows. It gives you the security and surveillance if it's fixed, which down the road the police department could look at applications that LPR could help them. Access control also in parking garages, revenue control, and intelligence traffic surveillance, which is primarily used in England right now. And of course the law enforcement model would be wanted vehicle identification, investigative research by data mining, which is very important for police work. Here are the basic system features for this particular brand. It has a touchscreen interface. It's got a moving map display. Now, the optional for a hot list system is so if the police interact, they can provide hot lists and immediate contact for vehicles they may be looking for. Automatic system boot and shutdown. In other words, it's got a navigator option. In other words, it will help navigate through the system, automatically boot up, and automatically shut down upon request. It's recording privacy and protection options. Basically what it does, it reads it and hits it, and it reads the hits only. Now this is mostly for the police department, where further application can be designed. Here's what I like it for. Time limit enforcement. I want to reach out and do permit enforcement and finding scofflaws and other wanted vehicles. This is the importance of trying to implement it at this level at the parking enforcement. What it does is, in the time limit enforcement, it supports the very rules that you dictate to the machine. Same position, is it on the same block face, is it at the same meter, is it at this district, is it long term? And what it does a real-time display of any overtime, and we're looking at picking up the wheel imaging option, which not only does it track the vehicle by GPS and where it stands, it also photographs the wheel and what position the wheel is in at the time the vehicle goes by and records the information. We do it now by what we call tire stem or air stem, and the PEOs basically just punch in to the computer, their handheld, where the position of the tire stem is at the time. This does it automatically. Permit zone enforcement, we can do it for on-street and off-street. It can be programmed to do permit only, permit plus time limit, which is very important around certain areas in the city where you have the permit required, but you're allowed to park for 2 hours before except residents have the permit. Becomes very important, and it gives you that real-time display of a permit hit. So in other words, the vehicle comes in, we lock it in, it's tied into the permit, we know he's there, it's the other person after 2 hours is identified that no longer can stay in the area. This is strictly what can do down the road once we work with the chief and once he decides if he wants to go into a program to where we may be able to see some of the information necessary to see wanted vehicles, which is very important. This basically is a law enforcement application to just give you an overview what it looks for, where it talks about stolen vehicles, felons, amber alerts, sex offenders, terrorist watch lists, expired revoked driver's licenses, uninsured motorists, which is important for police activity, but will not be in this particular model that we're seeking right now. The enforcement benefits, and this is where it becomes the more effective enforcement. And the reason why I say it's more effective, it reduces a lot of the time that it takes to do a lot of these activities. We're looking to wrap license plate recognition into the city sticker, permits, whether lot or restricted permits. And what they do now on overtime violations and in permit areas, it's very laborious in the fact that the parking enforcement officer has to keep logs, write logs, who's here, who's there, and so you're taking a 1 hour to 1.5 hours in a particular permit zone to indicate all this information, pull back around just in time to start enforcing it. You're taking a 1.5 hour time limit and reducing it to about 20 minutes. To where now what happens is that the LPR system can go through these areas within 20 minutes, go back and come back 10 minutes later and do it again with a new set of data and keep going back and back, which becomes very important in areas like the downtown and the business districts that constantly need turnover. And they're trying to ensure that people are turning over and not using the meters as a permanent parking spot. And therefore, it helps enhance that activity. It also it reduces operational costs. By the use of this, and if you take a look at it, we have proposed reducing one PEO next year through retirement in place, because this will make, with 2 units that we're looking at, it would make much more efficient activity where the parking enforcement can cover a larger area in a shorter period of time and be more effective. Also, increased revenue collection of unpaid vehicle infractions. This is the big one. Currently, at the meeting, I did a memo a few weeks ago that said that currently we have about 6,000 boot-eligible license plates within the city of Evanston. There again is a very labor-intensive operation with the PEOs where they have it electronically downloaded into their machine. However, they have to generate a list to see where these scofflaws are parked. Therefore, they have to go to the street, see if they're there, when they're there, and hopefully they are there. With this information, which also downloads, regardless where the person goes with the license plate recognition on a daily update, regardless where that car is parked, they'll find it. I did a demonstration last year and had a company come in to demonstrate it, and within a 4-block radius of City Hall here, within 40 minutes, we were able to identify 5 boot-eligible vehicles. Normally, we can't do that in 8 hours. Another thing is data gathering for evidence and review, which really is important. There's many times that I'm directed by certain committees or asked by council members to look at survey an area for overtime parking, for usage, how we can improve it. This will help it automatically. It will have the data. We'll be able to go back and review it and check it against other data as a very sophisticated report gathering system, and will provide it to us automatically. Results of installations. The City of Chicago, and these are varied, 50% increase in booting revenues. Winnipeg, I increased 250%. University of Maryland, $70K annually by just going sticker-free for permits, which we're looking to do. Monterey, California, 73% increase. Washington, D.C., 500% increase in ticket revenue for street sweepers. Fort Collins, Colorado, 300% increase in booting program, which I alluded to. Chicago, over 750% increase in tickets for street sweeper pilot. This was strictly a pilot program. They never really enforced street sweeping, so this really shows what the license plate recognition do. We're seeing a range of payback on systems between 2 days and 6 months. We're anticipating, and I'm sorry, let me skip forward. I'm just going to pass through this.
Don't leave us hanging.
There we go. I'm sorry. Those 2 are basically referred to as the police. I want to get to the reports. The route playback report, which is important. I'm sorry. I did, didn't I? I'm sorry. I was talking about...
Payback?
Payback. 1 year. I'm looking for 1 year. About $100,000 we're anticipating, and I was going to cover later. My apologies. About 1 year payback on the system. And that's based on increased revenues and, of course, on the retirement of a parking enforcement officer. This is all data search evidence and review. It's for hot lists. This is more advanced, more towards the police and other implementations. However, permits and overtime hits. It provides that hot list. The action takes, it rejects, and it gives a reason why it rejected the hit, which is nice. It gives us a user hit and a unit hit, which is nice when we go back and we take a look at what are we doing wrong, why is the car there, but also provides a list of do we have constant offenders, the same offenders are back, and how do we change their behavior. The mobile reports route playback, which is very important. Gives you an idea where the PEO was at the time, tracks their route, tracks their activity. It reads where they've been, the number of hits they've gotten in that day. It produces the daily usage statistics as to how it's being used, log-ons per patroller per day, and occupancy rates, which I discussed earlier, where it can give us all those occupancy rates and makes it a lot easier for us when we're doing surveys and studies, especially with economic development, when we're looking to improve in certain areas of the city. So we can give them a better idea how to provide parking for the new developer. Budget impact, and there again, thank you, Mr. City Manager, for reminding me. We're looking to install by March 1st, 2012. We have a proposed budget of about $120,000, and this is for 2 units. And, and we're looking at an increase in general fund revenue of $100,000, and this is in additional parking fines and boots. And last but not least, this is what the technology will do for us. It'll improve staff efficiency and safety, and I mean by safety, there's going to be required less time for the PEO to stop, slow down, risk when the drivers come up behind them, getting out of the vehicle. Even though they're going to have to exit the vehicle at times to issue citations, they're going to be more efficient in doing it because they're going to be told when they should do it, and not on an everyday basis or an every minute basis.
Mr. Voss, excuse me, Alderman Nguyen has a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Sorry, go right ahead.
More efficient collection, a better evidence support in contested cases, which is important. We get a lot of citations contested, and this will provide better evidence, especially in the 2-hour zones, and once we can bring it into the city sticker and permit module where we can put everything into the license plate. And provide data for better to manage the entire parking system, utilization patterns, integrate with current parking management software, and have a return on the investment, like I said before, of less than 1 year. In addition to this, there's future uses that we're going to be able to identify, and I mentioned earlier about street sweepers. Ms. Robinson and I had been discussing this about 1.5 years ago, about the thought of freeing up PEOs by using license plate recognition in the future to attach to street sweepers. That would generate the capture. You would eliminate the people saying, well, they swept the street already and I parked my car back there, because the street sweeper operator would be taking the photo of the car, the violation, and then it would eventually go through a review process, and then the citation would be mailed out to the violator. There's a lot of information, a lot of things that we'd have to move through to get to that point, but that's one of the future applications we'd be able to use for it. That's about what I have. Questions, please.
Alderman Nguyen.
Well, I think that Big Brother is the discussion at this end, but I think that that Mr. Voss addressed one of the issues, because I think that's something that we all hear a lot about, is that folks say, call an alderman and say, I wasn't where they said I was, or the sign wasn't where it was, or I was parked differently. So I guess my question is, does this help resolve those issues so that we'll have a photo of what the violation actually was?
That's what it's designed to do, and depending on how we implement it, especially in the 2-hour, that'll make sure that the signs are there. It captures everything necessary to defend the citation.
All right, and just so that I just thought of something, that instead of having this street sweeper take the picture, maybe what we could do is do a reverse 911 to alert everyone in a particular area the night before the street sweeping is happening, that they should all go out and move their cars. So rather than have it be the penalty, why don't we have it be the reminder call? So, okay.
I'll talk with...
I'm just saying.
It's a good idea. I'll speak with staff.
Some people have someone in their neighborhood who is that reminder person. We used to, who would telephone every neighbor who left their car out on the block, and saved us all thousands of dollars worth of tickets.
Right.
So. But so that was my biggest question, was if that would help in terms of resolving that issue.
That is a wonderful idea. Alderman Grover?
Thank you. I think what came out of the citizen engagement budget process was this idea, this real sincere interest in capturing revenue that's on the table. And it seems to me that although some of this technology is hard to swallow because it seems so newly intrusive, but it does get us that revenue that we are unable to collect, that we are unable to find because we're not able to get our POs out there to do the booting. It's all lost opportunity. And I think this is one way in which we can follow the suggestion of the citizens who participated in the budget process and get the money that's on the table that's already due to the city.
Thank you. Alderman Burrus?
Thank you, Alderman Grover. That was something I was going to bring up. But then also to follow up on Mr. Voss, you said there are 6,000 outstanding I don't know if it was violations or violators, or if there's one person with 6,000 violations. I don't know. Could be. How much money are we approximately talking about with those 6,000 violations? And I just want to make sure I'm correct. So with this new system, we'll capture approximately $100,000 more per year.
That's our anticipation, yes, in capturing. As to the total amount of money, I'd have to get back with you on that. But I did do I think, a memo to the council prior to the budget process. And if I remember correctly, is if we, to get an idea, if we went from 5 boot-eligible tickets to 3 boot-eligible tickets, just to give you an idea, it's $300,000. So there's probably $600,000 sitting out there.
That's a lot of people that we can keep employed.
Thank you. Alderman Fisk?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I wanted to pick up on that, on Alderman Burrus's question. Is it the city that actually installs the boots, or is it the tow company, or who actually does that?
The PEOs are the ones that identify the boots. The tow company installs the boot.
Okay,
and then
so
we pay the tow company.
Whatever the charge is to pay your tickets and do the boot removal and all of that, what percentage of that amount goes to the city and what percentage of that amount goes to the tow company?
The tow company gets, let me back up a little bit. We charge $125 for the boot fee. Out of that boot fee, the tow company gets $75 of it. The city gets 50 of it. We get 100% of the tickets that are collected.
Okay.
The ticket revenue.
And the violator is required to pay their tickets at the time the boot is removed, is that correct?
They have to pay it to get the boot removed. In other words, they have to come in full compliance in order to have the boot removed.
Okay. Thank you.
Alderman Rainey?
Well, Mr. Voss, other than increasing the number of boots, which would then increase some revenue because you can't get your car back until you pay, how else would it increase collections? Because I'm not making that connection.
I think it's more that it would increase revenues based on more the permit module or the 2-hour enforcement. The 2-hour enforcement, like I said, is very laborious, and it takes hours sometimes to go through a permit area, and for the PEO to go on, make their logs, go back, wait for the people to wipe off the chalk, move their cars, come back into the same space, and never really be cited for their misuse of the 2-hour permit. So you're going to see the increase more in, when I say collection of revenues, in the 2-hour enforcement module, where it will become more efficient and more effective.
Well, I can see it increasing the amount we ticket and therefore the amount owed to us, but I don't see it increasing the amount of collections. I think there are going to be those people who will automatically pay when they get a ticket. That goes without saying. So we might get more of them. But I think our shortfall is really in the collections, which this really has nothing to do with. I think we have so many outstanding fees and fines, and that goes to the the citizen comments about collecting what we're owed. And I don't see that this piece of equipment, although I support it 100%, I see us being able to give more tickets, and more of the responsible violators will pay their tickets, so we'll get more money that way. But I think we have a chronic systemic problem of unpaid tickets. And I think we have to go after that. And I've heard rumors that we are going to try and go after that. So.
It's in the proposed budget.
Alderman Braithwaite.
Mr. Voss, just two quick questions. The first one is, where's the real cost in this? Is it in the equipment, the software, and the training?
Yes.
And then the backup question is, are you going to propose that it comes out of the general fund or the parking fund?
No, I've budgeted for 2012 out of the parking fund.
Thank you. Alderman Burrus.
Two questions. I also want to follow up on what Alderman Rainey was saying about how is this going to increase revenue. Immediately, I'm not sure how much the PEO is per year, but if we're going to eliminate one PEO, that's an immediate cost savings that could be put somewhere else. And I'm assuming that's, I'm just going to throw out a number, 80-ish thousand?
Depending when the person retires, that's...
So we're talking 80,000 immediate, that is year after year after year. So that's, a forestry worker, that's a public works person immediately. And then my second question, something that you and I have talked about and also have mentioned on parking and transportation, of possibly doing a resident yearly parking pass, where residents could buy, I'm just going to throw out a number, $200 a year, and they can park at meters for only a 2-hour period, but basically we're getting the revenue up front, so people are not having to carry quarters around or run down to the pay and display or whatever. So could we incorporate that in this license plate recognition software at some point?
Based on the information I've gotten from who I believe is going to be our represented firm, yes, any kind of permit module, basically that's what it would be. It would be rolled into the license plate, and that's the object of it. And so, yes, any kind of permit like that we could eventually add to the module.
Thank you.
Alderman Rainey.
Well, sans this piece of equipment, I would just like to say that we should not dismiss the value of a PEO. They are worth their weight in gold, and so while this piece of equipment might substitute for one retiring PEO, I don't think it is a waste of money to have PEOs on our staff. I think they bring real live revenue to this community, no matter how much people hate them.
Thank you, Alderman Rainey. I don't see any more lights. Mr. Voss, thank you very much.
Next, Madam Mayor, members of the council, we'd like to give you an update on our ongoing work regarding the Robert Crown Center. We believe we are at a point now to issue a request for proposal to move this project forward. Mr. Gaynor is here with a presentation.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, Clerk Green, City Manager BOBKIEWICZ, Doug Gaynor, Director of Parks, Recreation, and Community Services. As you know, we have been working on what we should do with the Crown Center, and over the last probably 10 or 12 years, there's been a great deal of discussion. The background on this is the Crown Center was originally constructed in 1974. It's a 61,000 square foot facility, and it houses 1.5 ice surfaces, a gymnasium, and a variety of multi-purpose spaces. Crown's 1.5 ice surfaces are not adequate to meet current demand for ice time. In 2003, Crown underwent a comprehensive infrastructure analysis which concluded that the facility required extensive renovations in order to comply with current codes. In order to meet current demand, the City Council has determined that reconstruction and expansion of the facility is preferred over a code compliance renovation. In order to limit taxpayer burden, the city is seeking to procure the services of a private developer to design, build, finance, and operate a new Crown Center. The RFQ process timeline. November 16th, 2009, City Council directed staff to prepare a request for qualifications to procure the services of a developer for this project. On April 1st, 2010, the RFQ was issued. On the 29th, 8 responses were received. August 23rd, 4 developer teams were shortlisted. On January 24th, 2011, 3 developer teams were pre-qualified: Harbor Contractors, William Blair, and McCaffrey Interests. In January 2011, staff began preparation of additional studies requested by the pre-qualified developers. In January of 2011, staff began the preparation for an RFP for the pre-qualified developers. Additional studies and timelines. On January 13th of 2011, an RFP for Phase 1 environmental site assessment and geotechnical work was issued. On the 20th, RFP for market study was also issued. March 28th, 2011, the Phase 1 environmental and geotechnical work was awarded to a consultant, the EPI, and on the 28th also, a market study was awarded to consultants, HVS. May 12th, 2011, Phase 1 of the environmental study was completed, and on June 30th, the geotech work was completed. September 30th, the market study was completed. The environmental site assessment, the purpose of the report was to collect, identify, and summarize information on past or present recognized environmental conditions or activities on the property. Assessments included review of all available historic and geographic records, which could provide insight into past land uses and potential environmental concerns. The assessment revealed no evidence of recognized environmental conditions on the property. That's a very important part. Assessments also concluded that no further investigation was deemed warranted at this time. The purpose of the report was to evaluate subsurface soils on the property for preliminary foundation system analysis. Investigations included 16 soil borings at various depths and analysis of soil materials. Investigation concluded that existing shallow depth soils are not capable of supporting the proposed building. Investigation recommended that proposed structures be supported by caissons drilled to approximately 50 feet below grade. And this is not unusual. This is the type of construction that we had to do at James Park, which was also located in soils similar to this. Investigation also recommended removal of the uppermost 3 feet of fill in future slab-on-grade areas. The market study, purpose of this report was to review the current operation and assess the market demand potential of a new expanded facility. Work included staff and user interviews and analysis of economic and demographic data analysis of programming and ice utilization and comparative analysis of the local market. Reports concluded that demand exists for a regulation-size ice surface in addition to 1 1/2 ice surfaces currently at Crown. That's a little far for me to read at this point without glasses, so hang in there. The RFP documents. The introduction, financing options for purpose responses, procurement process, evaluation and selection information, proposal instructions, proposal forms, contractual agreements, general technical specifications for construction, design build work requirements and procedures, operation and maintenance requirements, facility evaluation protocol, and repair and replacement schedule. All of this information was put on a link for the City Council, and you should have been able to obtain that. The RFP's project program, or the scope, includes ice rinks, one 100 by 200 and one 85 by 200 ice surfaces, and one 60 by 80. One 110 by 80 gymnasium with a running track above, locker and team rooms, 10,000 square feet of multi-purpose rooms, 5,000 square feet for a branch library, concession services, administrative offices, associated support facilities, including the lobby, the restrooms, storage, surface parking, 2 lighted baseball fields, 2 lighted soccer and football fields, 4 lighted tennis courts, which are existing and would not be part of this program, 1 children's playground, ages 2 to 5 and 5 to 12 in the same general area, and associated park accommodations, walkways, fencing, site furnishings, etc. And this is the anticipated schedule that we have. Issue for a request for the proposal October 27th. One-on-one meetings with proposers on November 10th to go over any questions they have on the package that we would distribute. The deadline for the RFP questions would be December 1st. Final addendum and question responses would be issued on the 15th of December. Proposed due date for the RFP would be February 2nd, 2012. Proposal selection and start of negotiations March 29th, 2012. Project award and agreement execution May 28th. Design build work would begin summer, fall of 2012, and the design build work completed summer, fall 2014. And that pretty much is where we are today. And the request we have before you tonight is to approve the recommendation to send out the RFP.
Alderman Wilson.
I'd like to move that we approve the request and send out the RFP.
It's been moved and seconded. For discussion, Alderman Rainey.
Mr. Gaynor, can you tell us if Robert Crown Center is self-sufficient at the moment? In other words, do the fees cover the cost of operating the center?
We have 2 cost centers at Robert Crown. One is the ice center side, and the other is the recreation side. The ice center side comes very, very close to covering the cost. The recreation center side does not.
Can you talk about that in relation to the various options that are presented to the developers, or the developer that is ultimately selected? What are the chances, given that a developer would be willing to take on all the responsibilities of running the building, the project? You know, if given the fact that we've asked, one of the conditions is that fees and services remain basically in the same area that they currently are in terms of cost.
Well, it's really hard to anticipate and respond. However, what we have looked at as far as the demand study was concerned is that by adding the second ice rink, we're going to be able to continue to maintain the level of service we have now, which we are not accommodating everyone that wants ice time, but we should be able to sell a lot of ice time on the second sheet of ice, which should bring in a considerable amount more revenue without a lot more expense to the operator.
Alderman Holmes.
I did speak with Mr. Gaynor earlier today, but I wanted to raise this issue with the whole council in terms of the possibility of, since we are going to, it seems that if we're going to move ahead with this project, could we not consider adding the proposed, I guess, multi play areas for the soccer, lacrosse, and baseball indoor facilities? Since we're building at Robert Crown, why would this not be an option to do that? It's just a matter of adding some more space there that could take place of not doing something at the recycling center, but to add it right at Robert Crown. I know that this was not on the table when you all started this process, but this came up, just this spring. So I wanted to really ask council members how they felt about it, because I think that it would certainly be a good option.
Alderman Wilson.
Generally speaking, in our discussions from the inception of this concept, we did look at least I did, and I think others of us did, look at that possibility. And a couple of factors come into play. First of all, the additional cost of including this extra space or that kind of extra space in the building would significantly increase the cost of the structure. So to Alderman Rainey's point, you have, I guess we'll call it a balance for what it's going to cost to construct the building versus what you're going to receive or the prospect of receiving through the operation of the rink's revenues. And I don't know that that would necessarily be, I think that would throw off the feasibility. In addition, you would also be greatly increasing the footprint of the building itself, and that's going to take up the park space, but you're also going to not only need additional building footprint space, but substantially greater parking space. And if we were to do that, we would be eliminating, again, the football and baseball fields as well as the open space of the park itself. So throwing the cost out of balance and taking up that additional space, I think, at least in my mind, made that not really feasible.
Could I ask
Go ahead.
before? I know you have other lights on, but how did you consider this when this hadn't even? How was this considered before when this hadn't even come before us? I guess I'm kind of stuck on that first, and I have other questions as well.
How did I consider what?
You said you all did consider adding this in.
We discussed having additional indoor recreation space as part of a possible Crown Center. That was part of the original conversations that I had, and I think members of the committee, Alderman Burrus.
I don't know. It was just new to me in terms of when the proposal was brought to us. So I'm just wondering how it got discussed earlier. That's just for my own information.
Yeah, I mean,
and I understand that the footprint would have to be increased. I think, what is it, about 14,000 square feet?
Well, it depends on what you want to have.
Well, I mean, that's what you're going to have. But that's
field.
what you're proposing at the recycling center for this facility that you were discussing at the presentation a couple of.
Right. The recycling facility is much smaller, even I think, than what we'd some of the things we bounced around. So there have been discussions about an indoor soccer field, indoor baseball fields, and those are ongoing. People have suggested that we do that developers build very large indoor recreation spaces over by the recycling center. There's people are constantly coming up with ideas, but those kinds of ideas were talked about. And again, I think to fill the entire park area or a substantially greater portion of the park area, I don't know that that would be a great idea. But also, again, the cost of the construction is, and let me point out here that the RFP that's prepared is tied to the proposals that we received. We received proposals, and the cost-benefit analysis is built into that. So if you change that dramatically, I don't know that the profitability model is going to be there for an operator.
Don, can you explain who we is?
We would be, there was a committee that was formed, Alderman Burrus and I, and recently Alderman Braithwaite, but previously Alderman Jean-Baptiste, as well as a number of staff members have been talking about this for some, it's what? Recreation Commission as well. And going back, I don't know, a decade, maybe there's been needs assessments and other things that have been taken into account in the preparation of this.
Alderman Holmes, are you finished?
No, not yet, but I know you have other lights. I'll come back.
Alderman Rainey.
Because none of us read this, based on some earlier comments, let me just tell you something that I imagined reading, and that is option 4, which does allow the developers to think outside the box and to be innovative in their presentations. If they think something else might work here, they can propose that. On Alderman Holmes's suggestion to add the indoor soccer and the indoor baseball, and the objection that it wouldn't really work because it would cut into the value to the developer of running the operation. One of the things that we heard over and over and over in terms of using the recycling center for indoor soccer and indoor baseball is what a lucrative business it is to run indoor soccer and indoor baseball. So to me, when I was reading this proposal, it was foremost in my mind that this actually is the addition to the Robert Crown reconstruction and rebuild that will actually make this a lucrative prospect for any developer who is involved, any of the three that are involved. Additionally, we heard over and over that parking isn't a big deal, that there won't be that many people who will be staying, they'll be dropping their kids off, and then also the fact that indoor baseball and indoor soccer is not year-round, it's only in the inclement weather for the most part. So I think it's a win-win to add this, and I would encourage any of the developers to propose it. When you're building all these thousands and thousands of square feet, to add a use such as this makes sense at the outset. It's as we built the Levy Center, you know, let's build a garden, let's do this, let's do this. This is the time to think big. If you're going to be doing this, now's the time to do it. We cannot afford as a city to give away a piece of our property. If the indoor soccer and indoor baseball people were interested in buying this, or if a for-profit operation wanted to come along and buy it, that would be great. But this is a giveaway. This is a total giveaway, and we have an opportunity to make a premier sports facility at Robert Crown. Now's the time to make that decision.
Thank you. Alderman Burrus?
My first thing, I was trying to explain who we were, but Alderman Wilson did it for me. I would also encourage the developer, when we're talking about the concessions and possible eatery, to find a partner and not just a regular concession stand, but there's an opportunity for that whole area for economic development, and we need to, once again, keep explaining that to them and talking about that a lot during this. But thank you for all the work. It really has been a 2-year process with a lot of people, good input from the Recreation Board and from Alderman Wilson and former Alderman Jean-Baptiste. So I'm glad that we're finally at this process.
Alderman Holmes.
Well, I have followed along and did read this from the beginning. However, when the presentation was made from the group about the baseball and the soccer, which really was new to me in terms of that presentation, and I'm very much aware over the decades that things have been talked about, but when you get a formal proposal, that's a little bit different. And when I heard that presentation, I immediately sent some questions to the city manager, which also went to Mr. Gaynor, which included helping me to understand how this could be incorporated into the Robert Crown, because I thought about it right away, that this would be a possible solution. As I read through and became familiar again with all the things that were proposed in here, I'm just wondering, what have we done in terms of like the proposed library now, since things have changed? See, a lot of things have changed since you guys started out 2 years ago and today. And that's all I'm asking you to do, is to rethink. So now there's a proposed library here. Have we spoken to the library board in terms of, are they interested in having the library there? I mean, there are a lot of things for me, anyway, that are unanswered. So, and as I said, maybe I'm the only person that have these kind of questions, but I do. So that's additional space. And again, when you talk about getting rid of all the baseball and soccer fields, and I don't think 13,000 square feet would do that if that's the kind of facility that you want. So it's just a lot of unanswered questions for me. If I'm the only one that have them, then I'll take up the city manager's time and Mr. Gaynor's time to get those answers. But I thought maybe they might be interested in these economic times to other council members as well.
Thank you. Alderman Wilson.
Thank you. And with regard to the library, for years, and since I first started having conversations about Robert Crown, it's been my vision and my intention to have library space in that building. So from the very inception, that was my intention. And I have specifically discussed it with library board members over the years. So I have had some of those conversations with board members as far as what I was hoping to accomplish. But that's my own personal goals. So to the extent that any of the developers want to come up with changes to the plans, additionals, like Alderman Rainey pointed out, option 4 encourages some creativity. If somebody comes up with a creative idea that works, then that's great. At the same time, I don't want to pave over the entire Crown Park. So there has to be a balance there. So to the extent that we can fit what we need to fit into an appropriate footprint, that's great. But again, I don't want to fill the entire park with building and parking lot either. Thank you.
Alderman Rainey.
Well, I think you just made a good point. Let's not increase the parking. Make a more convenient drop-off. Drop them off and keep moving. I think we need to look at this. I don't see how we can send this to a developer it looks like a library's included. Alderman Wilson, is a library included in it? It's one of the conditions here.
Right. Is there a problem with that?
Well, there's not a problem with it, but when does the council get to talk about having, or doesn't it matter if the council wants a library in Robert Crown or not? I don't. This
is a request. We can approve or reject whatever comes in. So we're talking about sending out the request.
Are we sending a message to these developers that they should come back to us with a project that includes a library?
Right.
Right.
And my thing about the library, Alderman Wilson, is that now that there have been changes, I think, unless I've misunderstood, has the current library board or in their deliberations talked about this in terms of having the library there? Because everything that I see is just money anyway, like for the North Branch, or how would that be, staffed and whatever. That's why I'm raising the question, is because I don't see that kind of dialogue, in here.
This is basically vanilla box space for the option for library space. We can either choose to have it or not choose to have it. So it doesn't require them to put the books in the shelves and staff the librarians. It's accommodating the space should we choose to elect to put that in there.
Alderman Burrus.
I just want to make sure that we keep actually the parking for the hockey rink. Baseball and soccer drop-off for the recycling facility is vastly different than hockey. What parents do with hockey and where they're traveling from for hockey. So most of the hockey parents are coming and they're staying. They're not coming and dropping off. The sports are very different, and how you function is very different in a facility. Having been a hockey mom for 20 years. And this also, we're looking at this as a facility that will attract tournaments, regional, state, maybe even nationwide tournaments, and we want to have enough availability to accommodate many teams coming here. So just to think about that, and not that I want to pave over Robert Crown, but when we're doing this kind of facility, we need to think about the impact on traffic and parking for the local area.
Alderman Nguyen.
Well, the entire time that I've been on the council, and I'm getting a little tired of saying how long that's been, but it's been a goal of ours to modify Robert Crown, and I think probably the first time I met Doug Gaynor, it was a goal to do something about Robert Crown. There were already issues with it as long ago as 10 years ago. And there have been meetings and meetings and meetings, and the community has been asking for changes there. But one of the critical things were that, yes, rebuild Robert Crown, but don't take up all of the field space around it. It's wonderful field space. So I think that it's absolutely essential at this point that we move forward, and that if there's a library, a branch library there, I might have some discussion about that. But that to me is really minor. What's really most important here is that we get out there and hear what we get back. I mean, the overall picture here to me makes sense. This is what has been distilled from all the programmatic analysis and study that we have for this space, which has soil problems as it is. So it's not that easy to build, even on this space, whether we wanted to or not. I mean, there are cost issues involved. So I think that we need to hear back from the community, and we need to move forward with it. I think there has been enough discussion and analysis of what are the needs of the community. We know we want to be able to enhance our ice skating, already a very strong ice skating community. We want to be able to have other recreational indoor space. Those fields are used till midnight. The softball field is used till midnight. So we really do need to hold on to what we have there. I think using the recycling center is a very good idea. And the critical difference is, you're dropping your kid off for practice. At Robert Crown, you're staying to watch a game. And that's really a critical issue. Parents stay to watch a game. To watch your kids swing 100 times, no, you don't stay. So I think I support this. I think we should move forward with this. I think it's terrific that we actually have come up with a way to finance this, or a possibility of doing this. For the longest time, it seemed beyond our reach. And I think given the tough economic times that we're in, that there is even a possibility that we can do this is really a terrific sign of hope, and a real salute to the staff and all of the people working on this, that we can actually accomplish this. So I think we should move forward, and we will work through the details.
Thank you. Alderman Grover.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to reiterate what Alderman Wynn said, this is an RFP for this Robert Crown proposal. It doesn't ask us to approve a specific design or specific elements. I think that we'll learn from the response to the RFP. That'll tell us whether this public-private partnership makes sense for Evanston, and whether it'll produce the kind of Robert Crown Center that we've been aspiring to all these years. And as to the proposed use for the recycling center, what we didn't have as part of our discussion earlier was the actual proposal and plan by the recreation groups as to how they wanted to make use of the recycling center, the renovations they would do, why they thought that they would be successful in running and managing, what the plan was, what the use would be for the recycling center. I know the information was presented to the West Oakland Development Committee, but not to the full council, and that might be useful for us as well to distinguish the proposed use for the recycling center from those uses that we would want to make of a Robert Crown Center.
Alderman Rainey.
Well, I think that we should examine very carefully the square foot costs of 5,000 square feet for a library, and I really think that there's not a member of this council who doesn't support the rebuilding and the reappointing of the Robert Crown Center. But to put 5,000 square feet of library in there is just plain wrong. This proposal calls for providing multi-use sports, and we have two enormous demands, we're told, for indoor soccer and indoor baseball, and it's been eliminated. I did have the privilege of having the documents you're talking about and for the recycling center, and I don't care what people want to put in the recycling center. We cannot afford to give a piece of city property away. And I am saying that it's a very lucrative use that's going to be run by a not-for-profit. It would be much more suited in this property and eliminate the library. I just cannot imagine this council supporting the building of a 5,000 square foot branch library in the Robert Crown Center and ignoring the fact that there's baseball and soccer indoor needs for a few months a year. So I'm not sure how this is going to work when we get the proposals back, because it would be my thought that if these developers want to be considered, they have to include the library in their proposal, in at least the first three.
Thank you, Alderman Rainey. Alderman Holmes?
One more try. You know, I think that part of what we're supposed to do up here is to think sometimes outside of the box and to try to be as creative and innovative as we are asking our staff to be. And I'm just simply saying, Mr. Gaynor and I have a fairly long conversation on the phone, and he was sharing with me other places that have these multi-complexes with indoor swimming pools and water parks and all of that on the inside. And, of course, I know we are a little bit too conservative for all of that. However, it would seem to me that it would be very wise kind of thinking to ask them to look at what it would look like to have one facility with all of the amenities for soccer moms, hockey moms, dads, all of that where you could go for just one place to have this. And it seems that we have the opportunity when we're going to be building this. And I think I've been hearing about Robert Crown and the ice rink being expanded for years as well. And I'm certainly not saying let's not do any of this. I'm not supporting it. I'm just asking us, is it possible to think about having all of it under one roof? And I would think that we would be open to that thinking, if not doing, but thinking. And also, as far as the library is concerned, I'm not saying if that's what you want to have, that's fine, but I'm saying that the people who are going to be in charge of libraries, which I believe is not us anymore, but the library board, have they been brought up to date? And that's all I'm asking. I haven't heard an answer to that yet.
Alderman Wilson?
Well, I believe that I did specifically mention just a few minutes ago that I have talked to library board members about this over the years and on an ongoing basis. So I don't know whether they'll approve it or whether they want to do it or not, but that's up to them. It's 5,000 square feet. It can be used for any purpose, I suppose, that we choose. This is not just an ice rink. It's a community center. And I think the vision that went into this was to create more of not just an ice rink, but to create an appropriate and usable community center space. And that includes the gym, that includes the little running track area, that includes the child care that's done there. It includes the classes that people take there. It includes a lot of programming that happens at the Crown Center that it's ill-suited for serving. And this facility would be more appropriate for serving all of those community needs. So it's not just about the ice rink. And to your point, this committee met we saw the timeline. We've been, meeting since 2009? We took these things into account. We talked about including soccer fields. We talked about including other types of space in there. And personally, I don't think it works. So in my mind, I don't see how that can work. But on the other hand, if there's a developer that wants to come in and make a proposal that they think will be economically feasible, it's on the table. They can be as creative as they want to be. But I think it's important to get the RFP out and get moving with this project, because all we've done for all these years is very little, and we're finally at a point where we're ready to do something.
Alderman Burrus?
So, okay, I'm not for obviously having the library there. That's But according to this, it would be the developer operating it. So if they so choose to put in a library and they think that they can finance it and get money out of it by operating it with their employees, that's their business. No. It says to operate, build, and operate. We are talking about if the developer can put it in their proposal to actually make it financially feasible, because city employees will be first offered jobs in this new facility. If they want to hire library people or a reading room, according to this, that's how it would work. We're not talking about city employees at this point. We're talking about a developer financially being able to operate this center. And of the 2 years, I actually don't really remember, and I know I missed a meeting, about putting $5,000 into the library. And I think this current system under the library, we're turning things over to the library board, that's completely different. And we're going to have a library here and try to have one at Dodge and Dempster on the west side. So my thought is if the developer thinks that's lucrative, that's their business.
I think the city manager would like to be next.
Just a clarification on, I think, staff's understanding of how the library would work and also some of the recreational spaces that are not ICE-related. The expectation is that the city would be a renter, and that if there is a space for the library, that the Evanston Public Library would have a lease arrangement for the space. So I think if the council is expecting that a library is here, the tenant would be the Evanston Public Library. There would be money spent to the operator of the facility from the Evanston Public Library for that space. As well, the recreational classes that we would be providing there, the city would be a renter for that space. So I think the council needs to decide, as far as the library space is concerned, if you wish to have any kind of options to the developer. I think we could include, in essence, this conversation as part of the RFP to say that this has been long planned, long discussed. There have been changes, and an option for a proposer could be an alternate use for that 5,000 square feet. And then once that comes in, it ultimately is the council's decision to either go and make that space available to the Evanston Public Library or to go forward with an alternate use.
Alderman Rainey.
Well, that was a little more complicated than what I was going to say, but one of the options is, as you stated, the developer can come along, build it all, collect all the fees, set all the fees, as long as they're similar to what we have now, and period, just like you said. Or there's another option where the developer can build the building and only be responsible for the sports activity, because the proposal sees a division of community center versus sports, and the city would have the responsibility of running and charging for and overseeing the community center activities, which I would assume would include the library. So there's no way a developer is going to build this building and be responsible for the library. There's just no way. It's just not going to happen.
Thank you, Alderman Rainey. Alderman Wilson. Alderman Braithwaite.
I'd like to call it to question.
Thank you very much, Alderman Braithwaite. The question has been called. City Clerk, you want to call the roll for this one?
Yes. Alderman Braithwaite. Yep. Aye. Alderman Nguyen.
Aye.
Alderman Wilson.
Aye.
Alderman Holmes.
No.
Alderman Tindem.
Aye.
Alderman Grover.
Aye.
Alderman Rainey.
No, but may I make a point of order? I am only voting on not to call the question. That's what this vote is.
That's correct.
That's what the vote is. Just to be clear.
Alderman Burrus.
Aye.
Alderman Fisk.
Aye.
It's 7-2.
7-2. We don't need a unanimous vote to call the question. All right. The question has been called, and the vote is now on the Robert Crown RFP. City Clerk?
Alderman Braithwaite.
Aye.
Alderman Nguyen.
Aye.
Alderman Wilson.
Aye.
Alderman Holmes.
Aye.
Alderman Tindem. Alderman Grover.
Aye.
Alderman Rainey.
Aye.
Alderman Burrus. Alderman Fisk.
Aye.
9-0.
9-0, the motion passes.
Madam Mayor, before you move to the next subject, I would like to just recognize Stephanie Levine, who was the person who pretty much put the RFP together with a team from our law department, as well as other members of the staff at the city. But I think Stephanie deserves a great deal of credit for putting it together.
Thank you for pointing that out, and thank you, Stephanie. Alderman Rainey?
Could Stephanie answer a question for us? Stephanie, what happens if, how does the library piece work here? And how does option 4 really work? What kind of leeway are the 3 developers going to have in terms of that option 4?
It's pretty open, actually. I mean, they can pretty much propose whatever they want in any kind of arrangement. There's no specific mention of the library as something in play, but it's totally open for discussion.
I'll be interested. I was hoping that was your answer, and that's why I voted yes.
Thank you.
Thank you for your hard work.
City Manager, is Mr. Stonebeck next? I will.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, just doing a little bit of agenda management. We have 4 items remaining. We have a representative of the vendor from the Bell Shelter Company here from Florida for SP 4.2. The water main replacement street resurfacing. While I think it's staff's desire to get answers from you, I don't know that a week would make a difference to do that. The Tiger 3 grant application is time sensitive. An application deadline is upon us, and there are some significant issues there as far as funding. And then the disposable bag presentation, there are several members of the public here. So what's the council's pleasure? I mean, it's now 9:20. Well, I'd like to put off the water main replacement and street resurfacing and move that to next Monday evening, the 24th. Does that work for everyone?
Sure.
Staff's not happy, but they'll live with it. The
Madam
Tiger
Mayor?
3 we need to do, the bus shelters we need to do. Then the question is, would you like to do disposable bags tonight, or would you like to move that to a future meeting?
Can we ask?
They want to do it.
People are here.
They've been sitting here all night.
Let's do it. I think we should do it.
We should explain how
Well, if we were to keep the bag item as where it is, it's probably another hour, hour and a half, unless the council wishes to change the order.
Can you give me 2 minutes?
What's going to take
Well, why don't we
an
move
hour?
forward with the bus
Let's go
shelters?
ahead with the bus shelter and
then
start
we'll see
now.
where
We're
at.
just losing time by
Absolutely.
dithering. So,
Madam Mayor, members of the council, you have before you a report from the Public Works Department regarding bus shelters. Ms. Robinson, the director, is here. I think has a brief presentation on the work that's been done. We're here this evening to get the council's buy-off on moving forward with the installation of the additional shelters now that the pilot has been up for several months. Ms. Robinson, good evening.
Good evening. As the city manager mentioned, we're going to talk about the
SP 4.2 is the potential bus shelter location agenda item, and Rajiv Dahal is here. Go there. And to give a presentation, we have a contract that was signed by the City Council with COA, and we have that representative here as well. And we're going to talk about 2 phases of implementation for next year. As you all know, that we have the pilot, which we'd like to thank Alderman Holmes for sponsoring or allowing us to place the pilot at Emerson and Dewey bus shelter. Has been very well received by the public, and I believe the aldermen as well. So we would like to now move forward with expanding the locations. So having said that, I'll be here to answer any questions that you may have, and Rajiv is going to do the presentation.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council, Mr. City Clerk, and Mr. City Manager. I'll briefly go over the bus shelter program and talk about the potential locations for installation next year. Mark Osterholt, Municipal Affairs Manager from COA, is here tonight to answer any questions. Mark is sitting right there. We have a 10-year contract with the COA to install and maintain bus shelters at mutually agreed upon locations. COA will seek local business for advertisement. They will reimburse the city a portion of the revenue, and upon approval, COA will start installing the shelters in spring 2012. They've proposed 18 locations for phase 1 and another 18 locations for phase 2. Those were based on COA's initial review, alderman recommendation, and staff feedback. All approved potential locations will be finalized after Julie utility locates. Hopefully, we won't have any conflicts. Coordination with CTA PACE to relocate or install bus stop signs will have to be done after the bus shelters have been installed. As Suzette mentioned, we did install a pilot bus shelter at the Emerson Street and Dewey Avenue intersection on the south side. You can look at the photo. The advertisement piece will go right here. And then on this photo, the bus route map display will be installed inside the bus shelter. Of the 18 phase 1 locations, the first 2 on Central Street west of Girard will be actually west of the viaduct by the fire station and the Chandler Center driveway. The location on Church Street west of Oak would be in front of a parking lot. Dodge Avenue at Greenleaf already has a bus shelter at the northwest corner. That will have to be moved a few feet to the north for better visibility. Dodge Avenue at Main Street, northwest corner, will be by Walgreens. Dodge Avenue at Mulford, the southeast corner would be at the parking lot, GRC's parking lot. Dodge at Kirk will be across the street from Kirk, south of the school. Emerson, 2 locations on Emerson Street at southwest corner and northwest corner are 2 of the potential locations. Southwest corner has Brick Baver area. The northwest corner has existing bus shelter. Emerson at Dewey, the northeast corner would be across from the pilot bus shelter location. It will need easement from the private property. Golf at Crawford Avenue, northeast corner would be in a parkway by the florist shop. Golf at McDaniel Avenue would be in the northeast corner by the parking area by the bank. Green Bay Road at Emerson Street, northeast corner has the existing shelter. That may have to be moved a little bit to the south of the recently improved crosswalk location. Green Bay Road at Noyes would be across from Noyes Street. There's a landscaped median, which does have an art piece, and we'll need to talk to Parks and Recreation about that location. Howard Street at Barton, we think we can fit a bus shelter at the corner, more towards Barton than on Howard, but it will face Howard Street. The other three locations in Oakton would be by the animal shelter on the south side of Oakton, north side by Home Depot, and Oakton Street at Dodge Avenue, southwest corner would be in front of Dawes School. The Phase 2 locations are as follows. Asbury Avenue, we've looked at this at either at Harvard or Mulford. Still have to decide the northwest area, depending on where the bus actually stops. Asbury at Oakton Street, northwest corner. Actually, that'll be an Oakton Street in front of the health facility. There's a 4 or 5 inch diameter tree that also will need to work with Parks and Forestry. Asbury Avenue at Oakton Street, the southwest corner would be adjacent to the closed Oscar store. Central Street at Cowper, mid-block, that's at Mint Park, has the existing bus shelter. Central Street at Poplar Avenue has an existing Pace shelter. We're looking at replacing that one. Also, we'll need approval with from Pace to remove their bus shelter. Chicago Avenue at South Boulevard, northwest corner is by the train station. We'll need CTA easement for that one. Chicago Avenue between Washington and Main on the west side is also tight right-of-way. We most likely will need easement from CTA on that one also. Dempster Street at Dodge Avenue, southwest corner. We'll need an easement from the Dodge Dempster Shopping Plaza. Dodge Avenue, north of Lake Street, would be in front of the high school. We'll need a few feet of easement from the high school. Dodge Avenue at Dempster Street, northwest corner. This one also will need a few feet of easement from the recently closed KFC store, the property owners. Dodge Avenue at south of Lake, in the southeast corner, is part of the improved streetscape project. Dodge Avenue, Main Street, southeast corner, that's by the strip mall. Green Bay Road at Simpson Street, northwest corner is this kitty corner from here by Walgreens. We would need easement for that also, and relocate the Pace stop from further north. Oakton Street, across from Hartree, would be by James Park. Oakton Street, west of Hartree, by Aldi, we would have to work with CTA to relocate the bus stop from east of Hartree to west of Hartree. Ridge Avenue at Davis Street has an existing Pace shelter. Ridge Avenue at both locations at Hull Terrace have existing bus shelters. Open for questions.
One of the initial proposed locations was at Ridge in Maine on the southeast corner, and I had requested that you reach out to Alderman Wilson to see if it could be on the actually northeast corner, because there's more space there with Gray Park, and I'm for having a bus shelter. It's just on the southeast corner. There's no way. It's so cramped right there, and it doesn't make a lot of sense to have it on that corner, but it helpful, and I wasn't sure, and I didn't follow up with Alderman Wilson to find out if anyone had reached out to you on this or not.
It was mentioned to me. So you're suggesting putting it on the northwest corner? I'm sorry, the northeast corner?
The issue is where Gray Park's, where there's already benches there, and there's a lot more open space. It's just on the other corner, there's the apartment building that's has very little setback, so there's not much room on the sidewalk at all to put another structure, was my question. So I wasn't sure if anybody reached out to you or not.
Well, I defer to the traffic engineers, but it seems to me a bit counterintuitive to put it just past the controlled intersection where the bus is going to be stopping and you're going to be causing traffic to back up into the intersection. Is that a correct intuition?
Well, we've bus shelters or bus stops have been done on either side of the intersection. They do it on the far side or on their side, depending on the location and what's going on. I did take a look at that location that you mentioned this morning with Mark Westerholt. We do have a traffic signal box there, plus there are a couple of trees. So if that's the potential location, we'll need to work closely on that one.
Okay, there's no way that it can be on the other side. It is so crowded on that side of Main, on the south side of Main Street. There's not room for anything else.
It's where the bus stop is presently, right?
Yes.
Because I see people, when I walk to work, I see people there waiting. So I guess it seemed logical to have the shelter there because that's where they're already waiting. But
it is too cramped on that side. If you look at the building and the setback of that building, it would be completely inappropriate to add one more thing on that corner where people can't get through when you have an open space on their side. But if you don't want it there, I totally your business. It's your ward. I get it. Thanks.
I would entertain it if it made sense. And I don't know what the cost is of moving this equipment. If it's going to be $25,000 to move the equipment, I certainly don't want to incur that kind of expense.
Wait. Alderman Wilson, before we answer that, we'll actually go out and take a look at it because you are correct. We do not like to put the bus stops so that we back traffic up into the intersection. That's already a busy intersection to begin with. So let us do some more checking in the field, and then we'll get back with you with the actual estimate of relocating and all the impacts. And so we'll just hold that location for right now specifically and come back to you to address that one.
Thank you.
Alderman Grover.
Thank you. I'm looking at the map, and there are two very large areas in Evanston that won't be addressed with these new bus shelters. One is kind of northwest Evanston, and the other is our downtown. I'm wondering, did we consider bus shelter locations in those places? Because I think buses run through those areas. Do we already have existing shelters there that we don't need to replace? I know there's a big brick shelter at Hartree and Central Street that there's no reason to replace that one. Or do we not need one downtown because that's where our main bus hub is?
We do have a bus shelter at on Benson by the transportation center. We have other locations in mind in the future if the city council wants to entertain it. This is just starting out right now. It's not a done program, but in the future, if there are other locations that you have in mind, we'll be happy to take a look at.
Alderman Burrus.
So through this process, I know you gave us ideas for locations in our various wards. So you guys didn't identify anything in the downtown that would be appropriate for bus shelter at all?
Yes, we did. We gave some information, even in our general, the first presentation that we did. The multimodal plan does identify several locations downtown, but for to prepare for tonight, we asked each individual alderman to give us their input. We gave them potential locations, and we got yeses or nos, and that's what we presented. That's what we focused on. We relied on the direction of the alderman.
Okay, so basically, if you proposed a bus shelter, but the alderman of whatever particular ward, the downtown or wherever, said no, then you're absolutely not putting one there.
Madam Mayor, Alderman Burrus, that's not a part of these first, as the traffic engineer indicated. This is not meant to be a complete list, but that was the first screen that we went through the list with the ward alderman. We went with their priorities for this first, and that as we go through next phases, it may be appropriate or.
No, I just wanted clarification. So you did propose in downtown and other places, but if a ward alderman said, no, I don't want it, then it's not on the list. I'm just trying to be very clear.
That is correct.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Alderman Grover.
No, thank you.
I see no further lights. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rajiv.
So, Madam Mayor, members of the council will take that as general direction then, that the list, with the exception of the one location, there was a Main and Ridge, I believe, that we would work with the affected ward alderman to clarify if the location will work. Otherwise, we'll take that as general direction, move forward. Madam Mayor, During that item, Alderman Burrus met with the representatives of the Environment Board, and they would like to come back as a special order of business at your next meeting. So unless there's objection, we'll have the bag item on for October 24th. That then takes us to item SP 4.3, the Tiger 3 grant application. And Madam Mayor, Ms. Robinson's here with that item as well.
As you all know, well, may recall, last year we, under Tiger 2, we submitted a grant application and we're not successful. So the project involved Church Street, a streetscape, and street improvements along Church and the first, also along Dodge in front of the high school. So we have regenerated that application and actually extended it a little bit based on some of the applications that were successful in the past were multi-jurisdictional applications. So we took a look at the bike path situation that we had proposed before along Church, and we met with Skokie, Representative Skokie and Morton Grove, and to look at establishing what I'm calling a recreational bike path that would connect the lakefront all the way through to Harms Woods down Church Street. And I call it recreational in that we were seeking to try to establish a bike path that really was safe for kids. So we were looking at either some, and we're going to bring you some examples back based on how successful we are with the program of the bike paths when it's in a street is actually marked by delineators that are removable for snow removal purposes in the wintertime. And then we also are looking at the possibility of a multi-use sidewalk type scenario where it would be a walk and bicycle path along certain areas. So we want to do a little bit of a pilot for next year as a part of CIP, even if we're not successful in getting the Tiger grant. But the Tiger grant application would actually cover that. We got some support and participation acknowledgement from Skokie, but Morton Grove really was not interested. So the proposal that we have, I believe the limits actually go to Lawler, which would basically allow kids that were biking to Niles North. It kind of connects the two high schools, basically, so that you could go down a residential street in Lawler to get to Niles North down Church. So having said that, I'm going to turn it over to Paul Snyder, who's going to do the presentation for the application.
Thank you, Suzette. Good evening, Madam Mayor, council members, Clerk Green, Manager Bobkiewicz. Paul Schneider, I'm the city engineer. As Suzette said, we really took a grant that we had previously submitted last year and tried to improve upon it, again, in an effort to make a more competitive grant for this particular round of the Tiger 3 grant program. The program is administered by FHWA. They have approximately $500 million to distribute, so we're definitely trying to put together the best application we can. As Suzette said, we've expanded the limits from what we were looking at last year. I think in an effort to make it more competitive, bringing Skokie in as part of the team is a big benefit. So we did meet with them. They did have an interest in the on-street bike portion of what we've been trying to do. So the limits are actually going to be from Lawler Avenue and Skokie to Chicago Avenue and Evanston. This particular part of the bike path is actually part of a larger regional bike path, the Gulf Road bike path, which is actually a priority bike path for the CMAP group, the Chicago Metropolitan Planning Agency. So it's a priority 1 path, so we also think that'll strengthen our particular application here. Again, we are proposing to include part of Dodge Avenue, and with this application, we're looking at Dempster Street to Lyon Street, just north of Church. Also included with that, we do want to try and take advantage of an opportunity to modernize some traffic signals along Dodge. There's 7 signals we'd like to include all the way from Mulford Street up through Church Street. The limits here, Lawler, again, to Chicago Avenue, with the primary focus in this section being bicycle accommodations, and then the primary focus through the city of Evanston being a redevelopment as well as including those same accommodations. Dodge Avenue then, from Dempster Street all the way up to Church, really looking at trying to implement the West Evanston plan that was developed and approved by council. Looking a little more closely at the Evanston part of this, again, we would be looking at major rehabilitation along Church Street to include pedestrian and bicycle accommodations. Along Dodge then, really primarily working from Dempster up through Church, again trying to implement those applicable portions of the West Evanston plan. And the traffic signals, again, replacing the existing signals, modernizing them, interconnecting them, optimizing them for traffic flow. Again, one of the key focuses is going to be this intersection, Church and Dodge, and gives us a great opportunity to perform streetscape here should we get the application, should we get funded. Suzette mentioned bicycle accommodations. These particular accommodations were what came straight out of the West Evanston plan. We plan to try and be a little more aggressive, though, and see if we can't implement maybe best practices. The city of Chicago, actually this is Kinsey Street in the city of Chicago, where they actually have protected bike lanes that are along the shoulder or along the curb lane and protected by a parking lane. So it really separates the traffic flow from the bicycle accommodation. Oops. And I seem to be stuck there, but anyway. Hang on one second. Okay. Well, this, yeah, I apologize, but you're not going to be able to see it too well, but it is in your handout, and what you're looking at is really probably the most important part of the grant. And this is the part that breaks down what the funding application is going to be, how much funding we anticipate getting from FHWA, and the funding that we anticipate being required as the local match. So what we have here is an estimated total project in excess of $16 million. The estimated local cost, about $4.5 million. The way that local cost would break down if we were awarded this grant would be a 2012 effort primarily in Phase 1 and Phase 2 engineering. So in 2012, we would need in excess of $800,000 for the Phase 1 and in excess of $800,000 for the Phase 2. Those two efforts would have to run concurrently. They would both be funded entirely on a local cost basis. So there would be a need for the city to have $1,650,000 in order to do that in 2012. The next foreseeable cost then would be the Phase 3 construction engineering. That would happen in 2013 and 2014. There would be a local cost. The city would have to front $1.4 million. There would be a reimbursement of 80% of that by the FHWA once the project is complete. So there would be a net cost, a net local cost of $280,000. And once the project is done then, 2014, 2015, there would be a participating construction cost. That would be the local cost of construction. Basically, it would be 20% of the construction cost, $2.6 million, of which about half of that we've identified TIF funding that is already in the proposed budget. and this would be a reimbursement to FHWA. In other words, FHWA would front the money for the construction. Once the project's done or in progress of the project, the city would then have to reimburse FHWA the local share of that cost. So what we're asking council tonight is to authorize the city manager to go ahead and make application for this grant. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Alderman Rainey.
Well, I'd like to save the 5th and 2nd Ward some money and ask, is it really necessary to put the Oakton and Mulford traffic signal on Dodge in this proposal? I thought isn't the Mulford signal kind of a new one?
It is, and that's actually one of the reasons that particular cost in this isn't necessarily that significant. The cost that you're referring to is really the connection and optimization of those signals. The older hardware would be replaced, but in a particular case where a signal, for instance, we just received a grant for Dempster Street. That includes 6 signals, 2 of which are fairly new, so we don't have to redo the signals, but they are part of the optimization, which isn't that particularly costly. It would be some, exactly.
Are there any other questions? Alderman Wilson.
In the funding portion, it mentions obviously borrowing the funds as an option, or a combination of borrowing and or modifying the roadway program that we have in place under the current CIP plan. What would that change look like? Or I assume we haven't had a chance, or you all haven't had a chance to tell us how that would modify our existing plan, as opposed to borrowing the money.
Well, the existing plan, that was one of the things, that was item 4.1 that we were going to talk about for 2012.
Right.
And so you do have the presentation and a list of projects that we were going to propose for next year. So we will be looking for $1.4 million. $1.4 million from out of those projects, which basically would be almost our entire program.
Right, and just looking through 13, 14, and 14, 15, most of the program for the next several years.
Well, for 13 and 14, it's split in half. It would be half the project.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
All right.
Alderman Braithwaite.
I just wanted to speak in support of this, and first by saying thank you very much to Director Robinson and also your staff for breathing some life into this. I've had an opportunity to speak to Alderman Holmes about this project, and again, I'm just really excited, not only for the residents in the 2nd and 5th Ward, but really for all of Evanston and any parent or worker who has to drive by the high school and what this means to the west side of town. I've had an opportunity to speak to Bill Stafford, and I know that he's in favor of this. I've had an opportunity to touch base with Robin Gable's office and also Jan Schakowsky's office, and they're also going to be helping to support this. So I'm just hoping that the rest of the council is as excited about this project as I am. Thank you.
Alderman Fisk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just have a few questions for you. I assume this is Washington National TIF and West Evanston TIF, and do you know what the amounts are coming out of both of those that you're requesting?
I want to say the bulk of it would be coming out of the West Evanston TIF, but there is a portion coming out of the Washington National TIF, and actually that both of those are identified in the current budget that I think was part of the presentation Saturday.
Okay.
Or at least in the CIP.
It's in the CIP. That portion of Church Street, the resurfacing of Church to, I believe it's from to Benson, correct? Is that from?
Okay, that's
from Benson to Chicago Avenue. That's in the CIP.
Okay.
Already.
I've got that. Okay, great. Mm-hmm. Who owns Church Street? Do we own Church Street?
That portion.
The Illinois Department of Transportation owns Church Street from the North Shore Channel to Dodge, and the city of Evanston owns it from that portion to the east.
Okay. Is Church Street proposed to be widened at any point along the way?
Not to my knowledge.
And then what happens at the east end where the bicycle path actually ends? I mean, where do bikers go at that point? Because that is at Chicago Avenue and Church, right?
The project would end there. The bike path termini could carry beyond that to the logical point, or could stop at a logical point.
Yeah,
so even though those are the limits of the project, it certainly wouldn't have to be the limit of the path or the accommodation.
Because that's a really congested and heavily trafficked intersection, and we need to get people safely
to where they're going,
away from there, whether to the lakefront or that would be the logical place.
Yes, and that's exactly where we intend to take it, to the lakefront.
Thank you. Alderman Burrus?
I have a couple questions. The first question is actually for Alderman Braithwaite. In your comments just now, you said Representative Schakowsky and Representative Gable support this project. Could you be more specific in what you mean by support? Support to me means dollars, but I'm not sure that that's what you meant.
No, I said they're aware of the project. I won't go so far.
You used the word support.
Oh, did I say support?
So I just wanted to make sure to be very clear.
Thank you for that.
So there's no dollars coming from the feds, but from Schakowsky, I mean, other than the grant itself, and from Representative Gable. I just want to be really clear.
Right.
Okay. Right. Thank you. And then I guess I'm concerned that we didn't, how long ago did we know we were applying for this, and why didn't we include this as a possibility or an option in the CIP planning? We talked about budget over the weekend. We're going to be talking about budget all fall, talking about capital improvement project, but suddenly, no, we actually need $4 million hasn't been part of our long-term plan. That's a little frustrating for me. And I'm concerned about bonding. Once again, our debt, is a problem. So where I understand it's important that we're infrastructure, I'm 100% for infrastructure improvement, but we need to be better planners about this and not, if we're going to go after a grant, we need to think about what that match is. And then my third and last question, if we do apply for it, and we don't get it, or we do get it, we can still reject it if we find, after much deliberation, we can't come up with that money. That's still a possibility, correct?
I would not encourage that, particularly if Alderman Braithwaite has already spoken to Representative Schakowsky. If we're lobbying our representatives for this money and they go out and get it for us and we turn it back, that would, as Alderman Holmes said, that's not a good thing. Thank you, Dolores.
I want to be really clear. By making a decision to go forward with the grant, this council is saying we are going to come up with that money no matter what. Despite the budget that we're going through, despite the capital improvement plan that we have been laying out, I just want to be really clear that's what you're asking. Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Okay.
And to answer the middle question, in terms of planning, the Tiger Grant application, this is the exact same application that we submitted last year, with the exception of the Skokie boundaries. But we have to do our normal planning, our normal CIP planning, our normal road resurfacing planning. So we would have come back to council if we were successful last year in securing that grant application. We would have been before you asking for the funding to cover the city's share for 2011 if we were successful last year. So we still need to do our normal CIP resurfacing planning, so that, because all the engineering is done in-house, so we need to do all the design work for this over the winter for our upcoming construction season. The opportunity to secure the grant is a very competitive process, very competitive. There were only 2 projects that received the grant in the state of Illinois from Tiger 2. So we're hopeful
but we still have to plan, like, what happens if we don't get it. So, because the odds are not necessarily in our favor, so we still have to, plan for our normal resurfacing road projects.
So are you proposing where that money's coming from, what you propose to take out of your capital improvement plan?
Well, our preferred request would be, we would be asking you to consider one of two options, to bond for the additional $1.4 million, or to make the adjustments to the road plan if council was so inclined.
Alderman Rainey.
Well, I know this has some other bells and whistles, but it also has some other money coming from the Tiger Grant is fed, right?
That's correct.
Yeah. The stretch of Dodge that got paved this year, it's beautiful. We did not take that money out of the general fund, the cash flow. We bonded for that. That's how your road got done. So Dempster, Dodge from Dempster North has got to be fixed. My car is falling apart because I drive over it every day. It's really horrible. And given how beautiful the rest of Dodge is, that's horrible. So we're going to have to do that anyway. And we do bond for reconstructing our roadways. We do. All of a sudden, everybody is all concerned about bonding. I think we might need a workshop on how we get some of these jobs done. This project here is a little over the top. I mean, it's really fabulous, and if we get the money, of course we have to go forward with it. But my concern is about some of the money coming out of this TIF. When you say 1.38 thousand, are you talking about 1,380,000?
Yes.
You are. What TIF is that?
Actually, it's coming out of the Washington TIF as well as the West Evanston TIF.
But how much is coming out of the Washington? How much? I mean, that's.
You happen to have the number?
I mean, I'm just thinking of Dodge and Dempster and Church and Dodge and all of the things that need to happen with that money. And are you going to bond for that TIF $1.3 million, or are you just going to extract $1.3 million of the increment?
Well, I'm looking at the document that's actually attached to the budget proposal for this year. And currently, within the Church Street, this is a section from Benson to Chicago, which is in the Washington TIF and is funded through the Washington TIF.
No, I'm not so concerned about that.
Well,
how much is that one?
That's $460,000.
Okay.
Okay. So the other balance of the money is going to come out of the West Evanston.
It's 800 at least, 900.
Let's see, the section from Dodge to Ashland is 360, and then there's also an intersection and also sidewalk improvement in there that I think adds up to the rest of the money. But that's all money that's currently programmed for 2012 in this budget. So actually, if we were to get the grant, we wouldn't spend that money this coming year like we're saying. We would have to push that back for the construction year, which would actually be late 2013 and 2014. So that budget would actually move back in the program.
Well, see, I think when you see the phases, when you see it spread out like that feels a little different. I mean, you're not just going to take, when would we be notified of this grant?
I believe late this year or very early next year.
All right, so let's say in December we got word, we wouldn't immediately match, with the $1.3 million out of the two TIFs.
That's correct. I think the only money we had programmed that would go into play in 2012 is a $200,000 line item that was in the West Evanston TIF. But then we'd have to make decisions on how to fund the other $1.4 million.
So is there $1 million in that TIF to take out, or would you bond for it?
Marty, do you happen to know?
For the West Evanston TIF, we would need to bond at least a portion of it, but for the Washington National, we would be able to take from reserves.
Okay, thank you very much. That's kind of the information I wanted.
Alderman Nguyen.
Yes, I have a question about the section of church that you said, Paul, is owned by the state. Did you say it was from McCormick to Dodge?
Yes.
Yes, which is the worst section of it, which now explains to me why it is the worst section. You know, in the past, it took a while, but we negotiated changing ownership rights of Ridge with the state, but only after they gave us the money to repair it. And we did that with sections of Sheridan also, I believe. Here we are, we're essentially going to pay for repairing the state's road, which they have neglected to such a degree that I'm sure it's making it much more expensive for us to repair that. If you east of Dodge, Church is a very different road to drive on. I mean, it still needs repair, but it's nothing like the washboard it is west of Dodge. You know, I don't want to gum up the works here, but you know, look, I'm thinking about this. I didn't know that that section of Church was state-owned, but it certainly seems to me that it would be worth approaching the state. I don't know how broke they are compared to us. That, you know, it's been their responsibility. It's just like Ridge was, you know, that they neglected Ridge for so long, and kept insisting that we patch it and take care of it until we finally, you know, forced them to give us the money to repair it, and then we were willing to take over for it. But I mean, is there any opportunity for us to get Illinois to pay for a portion of their neglect?
You want to take this one, or you want me to?
Oh, sure. There's a difference of opinion and jurisdictional transfer, but I think me and the mayor are on the same page. You asked a couple of questions. As far as the repair of Church, in this project, IDOT would be responsible for their cost of repaving Church.
Well, we still need to broach that. I've been working to set up a meeting with them, and in fact, in their program, they did have that section of Church to be repaved, just grind and resurface, basically from Grosse Pointe in Skokie to Dodge. And unfortunately, every year that project keeps falling back, and now it's back to 2014. And that's just a simple grind and resurface, that's it.
Right, which is exactly what they did with Sheridan with us for years and year, and Ridge also.
Right.
Okay,
so they do have money programmed that includes the very section that we're talking about. Now, whether we could get them to allow us to use that money in this project is another matter. I would be hopeful that we could negotiate something with them. At this point, I can't tell you that we have.
Well,
but they've programmed approximately $2 million.
Well, would that be enough to do that section?
Well, to grind and resurface it, but yeah, it would take a big dent out of the local share of what we're proposing.
Okay. Well, if we received this Tiger grant, I'm guessing that might improve our chances for breaking free some of that $2 million, or actually releasing it, especially if we talk to Robin Gable.
Yes, I would say so. And the second part of your question regarding the jurisdictional transfer, you know, we receive, although a minor amount of money for maintenance from the state for the roads that they are still responsible for maintaining. So over the years, as we have accepted responsibility for the roads, meaning ownership of the roads, that amount of money that we received to the general fund has dwindled, and I think we're just at about $70,000, and we were probably 3 times that amount early on, just from Sheridan Road, McCormick Boulevard, some of those things. You know, I guess I was of the mind that other jurisdictions have been successful at forcing the state to maintain their roads without taking ownership of those roads, because along with that ownership also comes the liability. So, because once we own it, we're responsible for accidents, we're responsible for everything. There's a lot, you know, I mean, it's in their best interest to turn everything over to the city. So it's not, we don't necessarily get the best deal in those scenarios, and it varies from one road to the other, but McCormick Boulevard is probably my pet peeve project. Since it's been done, we have had to crack seal it twice, and it's only been in existence for 4 years. That was one of the first roads that was paved when I came here, and that's really unusual. For us to be in that situation. And I think Paul and SAD have worked with the state to improve the quality of the type of mix that's being used on the roadway, so that, you know, we won't have that problem on Sheridan Road or Ridge. But so I would prefer that they keep ownership of what they already have ownership of, and just to reduce the city's liability.
And I understand that, as long as they properly maintain it.
Well, Alderman Nguyen, they won't properly maintain it. However, when the stimulus money first came out, when the portion that went for roads was allocated, the state of Illinois allocated the money, and we got 1 block of Dempster, and that's all that we got, because we, unlike other communities, have allowed the state to talk us into taking ownership of the roads. And the other communities have, as Ms. Robinson said, been successful in getting the roads repaired and keep the state still owning them. So we are not in an enviable position, and I would strongly support having the state continue to own the road. I'm sorry, Alderman, when were you done?
No, that was my question.
All right, Alderman Grover.
Thank you. We're seeking $11.7 million through the Tiger Grant funds. What did we ask for last year? Was it the same amount?
It was in that neighborhood.
Yeah, it was just slightly less, because we didn't include the Skokie portion, but not by much.
And what are we doing to Church right now? Church west of Dodge is being resurfaced.
Yeah, actually, I was going to mention, actually, IDOT has come in. They're doing just north of the high school property. They are grinding and resurfacing that particularly bad section. I think they've gone from Pittner to Dodge. Not quite as far as Pittner. Hartree to Dodge, but we, and actually Matt's been a big part of that too. We've been hawking IDOT for well over a year now to try and get that done, and they finally come in to do it. It's taken a long time. Actually, they've been out there for over 2 weeks, but it's significantly better than what's there, and what they're doing now is really a maintenance work that's supposed to hold us over till the other project comes over in 2014. So this is a temporary fix.
I just want to make sure there was no redundancy
with
what's happening now and what this plan is. I love this project, by the way. I think it's good.
Alderman Wilson.
I'll pass, thanks.
I got you. Alderman Fisk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, I'm glad to hear you say the comments about not taking over control of streets, because I've been concerned what happens after the streets we take ownership of them, they're beautifully paved. 5-10 years from now, we're going to have to foot the bills ourselves. And I don't know where that money is going to come from. I'm sure we'll find it somewhere. I'm still having trouble with the bike path part of it because east of Ridge, we have one-way streets in the downtown. And so with a path on Church Street, we'll be getting people into downtown on their bikes. But how do we get them out? We want them to use this as a circuit. Is that correct?
Well, ultimately, you're right. Our own internal bike plan would need to be modified a bit because we'll need to bring them out, I believe, on Davis.
Right.
And with Clark being kind of the quasi lakefront path.
Right.
But that's something that even in our own internal planning, as we do projects along Davis, we'd have to make accommodations for bikes. And if this whole idea of the protected bike lane really works out and takes hold, there's really no reason we couldn't consider applying it to other areas in the city, not necessarily having to do a whole paving and reconstruction project, but just restriping the road to accommodate, protected bike lanes. So that's another thing we kind of hope to get out of this.
Right, because it certainly would not be safe for families now to be riding their bicycles, westbound on Davis Street. And, the pretty picture that was up here on Kinsey looked wonderful. I mean, but they're all riding in the same direction.
Right,
and
right. So when you have a one-way couple, you'd have to make the same accommodation ultimately on that other couplet.
Okay, so explain to me where the bike path, because I don't remember from the picture, does that take parking away from one side of the street?
That's something we would have to analyze. I couldn't tell you right now what parking would or would not be impacted with this project. We really have to go out and see how much room is out there right now, and as parking gets potentially reconfigured for this bike accommodation, if parking would be reconfigured, shifted from lost in maybe a spot or two in certain locations, I can't tell you in any type of detail right now.
Right, but I mean, our hope was, even just in the preliminary planning, that we would not, there would be a minimal impact to parking in the downtown area, but there may be some additional parking. And, if we get the grant and move on, part of the Phase 1 and Phase 2 would also be developing some conceptual plans and actually holding community meetings to discuss, because we talked about a couple of scenarios for Church between Dodge and McCormick that involve either, widening the sidewalk and having a a bicycle path in that area, or
on the sidewalk?
On the sidewalk along the school. The school has indicated that they would give us as much right-of-way as we needed, or the protected bike path. We would look at a couple of scenarios and talk to the public and, of course, get automatic input as we pull together the plan closer and look at, what made the most sense to preserve as much parking as possible.
Alderman Holmes.
I really wanted to respond to Alderman Nguyen in terms of some of the things that we've been doing over the course of the last year, I believe, with the direction from Director Robinson in terms of contacting Springfield. We have residents emailing and calling to ask them to come out and fix Dodge, because, Church Street, and I think that's why they're out there now redoing this, is because they've been receiving this call. And she brought to us the same kind of plan that was used in Skokie, I believe, that they just the residents just kept it up until they did it. And we had wanted them to move up their date to coincide with our own date here in Evanston, but that hasn't happened yet. But I know I've talked to Bill Stafford at the high school, and Alderman Braithwaite and I have talked about it. So we'll continue to do that, as much pressure as we can from the residents to make sure that we can put as much pressure on the state as possible.
Good. That's good to hear.
I wondered how that happened.
Well, we think that's probably...
That's how Dempster got paved.
I'm sure it is. Congratulations.
We use it.
Alderman Burrus.
In general, I think the project is great. I think a lot of things we want to do are wonderful projects, but in our everyday life. There's a lot of things I'd like to do and a lot of trips I'd like to take, but my bank account says that I can't. So in general, I don't think debt is a bad thing, but the amount, I should actually be more specific, the percentage of the city's debt compared to our revenue is a serious concern when we look at the examining of the physical health of the city. And once again, we're borrowing and spending, and we're not looking at if we're going to borrow, what aren't we going to do, and why aren't we sticking to a plan? That's what I'm concerned about. We're talking about where the bike lane will go and how this works, but at least in my personal life, I look at this of, okay, how are you going to get money to do what you want to do? And as council people, we should probably look first at financially, how can we do this without borrowing more money, and what we continually do. And so I'd like to know from Mr. Lyons, if we went out for all these bonds, what then would bring our percentage up? Because our percentage of unabated bonds is substantial. What would this bring us to, and what would percentage of that would be of our budget? Just even a ballpark. Maybe I'm just naive, but it doesn't seem like anybody else is that concerned about financial impact of this, as wonderful as the project is. So please let me know what we would be looking at here.
I couldn't give an answer on the percentage of budget, but I can tell you that we do have programmed into next year's budget that we have the $5 million for the sewer fund. That was a transfer of IEPA debt onto property tax supported debt, and then somewhere between $4 and $6 million of capital improvements projects that would be paid for from the issuance of general obligation debt. We will plan on retiring somewhere between $6 and $8 million of old debt next year. So that gives us a net increase to our total debt of about $3 to $5 million over what we have currently. That's not going in the direction that we want to go, but it's also not, given the size of our total debt portfolio, it's going to add 2%, 3% to the total outstanding debt.
What is the overall outstanding debt? I guess that's what I'm getting at, is our debt load is really high, and we don't seem to be going in the direction of paying it down. We made, to get our pension, to help pay some of the pension, we had to raise taxes. So we're going in the right direction of trying to pay that, but our debt overall is still high, and we're not addressing it. And we're talking again of adding more debt. And I'm not sure just why we're not addressing that issue and not about the overall project. What are we doing when we're talking about these projects? What is the return on the investment, and can we afford to do it?
I think whether we can afford to do it is more a decision we have to make than asking Mr. Lyons.
Well, I'm just asking for percentage.
That's fair.
I think it's approximately, Marty said 1 to 2%. We can give you a more fine number, but I think that's a reasonable.
Well, I did say it's that 2 to 3%, depending on where we're at, especially when I'm looking at the unabated general obligation debt, and not those, as I think it's Alderman Rainey's pointed out a couple times, the TIF debt or water debt, a different subject. So.
Alderman Wilson.
Thank you. And that's why I asked the question, what would our capital improvement plan for the streets look like? And even the plan that we have on the table, well, let's put it this way. Everybody knows I spend a lot of time on bicycles. If you spend a lot of time on bicycles, you notice the roads a lot more than you do in the cars. And there's a long list: Sherman, Oak, Elmwood, parts of Sheridan, Church. There are a lot of places where the roads are deplorable, extremely bad, and they're not even on the list. And I appreciate that the city staff gets out, patches things when I need it. but those are short-term solutions, and we have a lot of, I'll be diplomatic and say, benign neglect on facilities, buildings, streets, and other things that we haven't been attending to. And I just, again, to, I guess, go along with Alderman Burrus, I hesitate to issue new debt. I know that there are people amongst us who are interested in doing some projects over the next year or two that are probably also going to require the issuance of bonds. And doing something like this is going to make that even that much more difficult. So I'm much more interested in developing a pay-as-you-go attitude towards things. And I know that's not popular. I know debt's important. But at some point, you have to pay the credit card bill, and you can't keep running up the credit card bill. And that's a lot of what the problem is here. The revenue shifts, and you don't have the cash flow to cover what you've got out there. So philosophically, I'm agreeing with your principle there.
Alderman Grover.
Thank you. By my reckoning, we're looking at funding about $1,580,000 out of TIFs, and that would either be from the increment or bonding out of the TIFs, right? And then the other $3 million would be the GEO bonds. So it's a $3 million.
That's provided. That still includes the state's portion of $2 million, which we hope to secure from them.
The state's not going to do the environmental study.
No, not phase 1 and phase 2. But their $2 million is the construction.
Where is their $2 million up there?
No, of the $4 million, city share includes a portion of the state's.
And so that would be 14, 15.
Currently, Marty, the state's, that $2 million we were talking about that the state had programmed, it's not up on that board right now. That's money that we would hope that we could get the state to divert here. But again, I can't tell you tonight that they've made any type of agreement there.
So does that mean it's an additional amount?
No.
It would reduce that amount. It would reduce the $4 million by some factor. It may not be.
And my question is, where is it? So the state funding's not up there. Is it part of the $2,650,000?
Yes.
So I'm just trying to give the council an idea of when is it? And so the state's participation is not until the construction phase.
Right.
So we still have to come up with our money next year.
Yes.
That's correct.
And I don't think we can bank on the state giving us anything, frankly.
Alderman Rainey.
I'm getting more and more confused. Let's forget about the state. I'm assuming that if we're in the plan, at some point, they'll repair the road. We just don't know when. But secondly, how much of the city's portion of this project is totally new money that we would not be putting to work renovating a roadway if it weren't for hearing about this grant possibility?
$1.45 million for 2012 is the new portion.
But I guess I would maybe take the question a little differently. If we were going to prioritize all of this area, where would it fit in the CIP if we were just paying for it in the normal course of business? For instance, is it on the in the plan that would have gone on tonight?
Part of it is, yes.
So
part of Church Street is in the plan, in the CIP plan already.
For this coming year.
For this coming year, yes.
So that's there anyway, and
How
we've already.
much?
1 point.
No. It's not 1.4 million.
It's 825.
It's the TIF dollars.
No, it's 464. Thank you, 460.
No, that's just one section, though. That's just a section of the Washington TIF. Then you've got the section of the West End TIF. So for next year, the numbers I was just reading to you is it would be the 1.5 million, including road, the sidewalk.
Yes, that's the road, the sidewalk, and yes, because we're rebuilding the sidewalks and the road is recommended TIF funding, and there's some CIP money in there as well.
The section of church from Chicago to Benson is not TIF money, but it's in the CIP, is bonded money to be constructed next year.
And Paul, the question is, how much is in the CIP for bonded money? So forget about the TIF. How much is in the CIP for bonded funds?
I can't tell you right this second. I want to say it's in the neighborhood of 400,000.
Yeah, I was going to say it's about 400,000. That's what I recall.
So there's already a program. There's already been an assignment of funds to do work. We're adding something to it. This work won't even be done this year. I mean, the additional money, the $1.45 million, won't even be spent this year. I mean, if we don't even know about the grant until December, we're talking in the following year.
Yes, it will be 2012 or possibly early 2013, but when they give us a commitment, they expect us to have the Phase 1 and Phase 2 done within a certain time frame.
But it doesn't mean that we can't reprioritize some other projects, because it seems to me if we get an opportunity to get these kinds of funds, that we ought to look very seriously at accepting them. And perhaps we can reorder the priorities in the CIP if we do get the money.
Right, that's what we will be asking. We will be asking back to the two options, either for additional bonding or to reprioritize the CIP. Those are the two options. If we were successful, we will be coming back to you with those options and asking for direction.
One of the things that has been driven home over the years is that, and especially in, I don't remember what year it was, but the year we did the survey of all the roadways and prioritized them as to which one needed to be done in what year, and I don't know how long the spread was. But we had an analysis then of waiting too long to restore a road. For example, Ridge, it just costs so much more to restore a road that has deteriorated beyond a certain point, and I don't know the technical terms. Mm-hmm. But we need to keep that in mind too.
Yes, we're updating. Part of the CIP has a reevaluation of the roads. This is actually the 6th year of our 5-year plan. So part of the 2012 CIP does that reevaluation.
The 6th year of the 5-year plan?
Yep.
Extended a year.
I caught that.
So, Ms. Robinson, if we vote to go ahead with this and are lucky enough to get the money, what you are telling me is some of my constituents who, as you know, have been calling me about potholes, and particularly one who's had 2 flat tires from the potholes in front of his home, which you have done a great job of filling. But I could end up telling them that no, they are not going to have their street resurfaced on the schedule that we promised them.
The CIP, I guess the short answer is yes, but the long answer is the priority of CIP projects. There are other projects there that are listed that potentially are not road related, like the Salt Dome, for example. I'll offer up something that happens to be near and dear to my heart, but the Salt Dome potentially could be a project that would move. So it's not necessarily just roads. There are other segments of the CIP that could be looked at.
All right, Alderman Burrus.
Was going along the exact same lines you were headed with your last question. So what percentage of the CIP would we need to divert to fund this? I mean, that's what it comes down to. We're robbing Peter to pay Paul. I mean, I know that I always go to basic things here, but we are playing a shell game with dollars when we've said we're going to pave certain streets in various wards, and now we're going to say, no, we aren't going to pave those streets, and we're going to take a large percentage of the CIP and put it toward this, or we're going to say, no, we can't afford it, and we're going to go write a check. Basically, we're going to take a check from the credit card company and write a check that way to fund this if we're going to also keep to the CIP plan. So any way you look at this, we are either borrowing big dollars or we're taking dollars away from other parts of the community that we've already said we will pave the roads or do other capital improvement projects. So I think that's a serious issue. We didn't plan. We aren't thinking forward. We're not keeping our promises, and we are not planning far enough in advance, and we're making reactionary decisions. We're going to make a decision tonight to spend $4.5 million, and we don't even have all the data. Some of the questions we're asking, we're not really getting complete answers on, but we're asking to go forward and spend that kind of dollars. How much time do we spend on budget hearing over $200,000, over $50,000? And how many people are we going to lay off this year and going to tell that they don't have health care, but we're going to go and spend more money that we don't have? This is, it's I think, irresponsible.
My apologies, Alderman Rainey. I skipped over you.
Well, I'm just so excited. I just almost jumping out of my chair. Finally getting a discussion on the capital improvement program, which when it comes before us, we sit here like bumps on a log and really do not debate the items in the capital plan. We don't single out the various methods of payment. Not all the capital plan is bonded. Some of it comes from grants, some of it comes from CD, some of it comes from this, some of it comes from that. But we're singling out this, and I understand. I mean, staff really asked for this one because it wasn't planned. But there is this huge capital plan which takes months and months of work to put together. And I hope when it comes before us, this council will actually go through it item by item, or at least category by category, and take a look at it for once in many, many years. It's really a very interesting program. It has to do with how we maintain our city, and if we just had a tenth of the discussion about that plan that we're having on this, I would have been happy earlier.
Seeing no... Yes.
I know, Rodney. It's too bad. I just can't let the opportunity pass because I think, Alderman, you're absolutely right. We need to discuss. But I think that what we are failing to realize is this particular plan is not new to some of us, as are other things that have been on the board for a long time in terms of talking about what needs to be done in certain parts of the city. So, Alderman Burrus, I hear you when you talk about other streets that have been promised. I have many in my ward that have been on there for years, way before I became alderman. Actually, I just got 2 done this year, so that were planned, or I guess maybe back in the late 90s, mid-90s anyway. So they got done this year. You know, so things do get delayed. And, you know, so I don't know when you talk about not planning, I think that when a grant comes up and it matches a particular thing, that doesn't mean that you haven't planned. It's just that there's something there that fits that at that particular time. And if I'm not mistaken, Tiger Grant from last year, this is just a little bit more improvement on the same plan that we had last year. So it's not a spur-of-the-moment kind of thing, and I think that's a little unfair, you know, to say that. And that's, well, yeah, but I know, but that's how I'm hearing it. So, you know, whether you meant it or not, but that's how I'm hearing it.
You didn't
but
know about this Tiger Grant until tonight.
Well, I know that, but what I'm saying is that last year we also applied for basically the same thing in a Tiger Grant. We just didn't get funded for it. And so, therefore, it came back again, and here we are, you know, discussing it again. So, you know, it's all right to bond and borrow in some things that, you know, maybe we like, but not for others. And I just a little bit, I'm not as excited, Alderman Rainey, as you are in coming out of my seat. I'm a little excited about coming out of my seat for something else, but not not the same reasons. Believe me. I know you were.
Alderman Braithwaite.
Yeah, I think Alderman Holmes said it best. Again, for me, everything is brand new. But in the short period of time that I've been on the council, I think Church Street is probably one of the most road, or the one road that I've heard the most complaints on. And so I remember sitting with Paul, kind of going over the ward, and that's something that he was able to point to that was in the budget. And I think you explained that, or Director Robinson did, that there is money set aside for Church Street in 2012, correct?
That's correct. That's correct.
And again, I was able to go to a plan that's been in place for I don't know how many years. When was that done? 2007? The West Street plan?
West Evanston.
Yeah. So just for clarity, and I think that's what we're doing right now, the plan has already been there. That's always been there. But the question is the Tiger Grant and taking advantage of that opportunity. Again, just for clarity. Is that what I'm hearing, Alderman Burrs?
Absolutely not.
Okay. Okay. Well, if anything, just out of defense to staff then, because I think there is a message that's being sent that this just sort of popped out of nowhere and it's irresponsibility.
Yeah, no,
but I think...
No, but that's exactly what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, when we were... I apologize. I didn't...
well, you're next if Alderman Braithwaite is finished.
Yeah, I just wanted to...
This is my issue with it, is we're brought a capital improvement plan, we're brought a budget, and we're not given options on this. We were not told you can have this or this. We were just told you can have this, and then we're at this meeting we said, well, you know what? There's also this $4.5 million you want. Staff had a responsibility. If they knew they were applying for this, and they did it last year, we were never told they were going to come back again this year to do it and ask us for a separate piece. So why, when we did the budget, did we not say, we're going to be going for this. If you want to fund this, that is an option, but you can't fund these other things. Similar to what Mr. BOBKIEWICZ does with the above and below line on the budget. We can fund X, but then you don't get Y. We were never told that there was going to be an either or. This was sprung on us tonight to say now you have an either or, but we don't know really what what we are giving up if we fund this $4.5 million. We do not have a list that says this is option one, this is what you're giving up. That is irresponsible because we're making a decision. We don't even know what's behind door number one on what we're giving up. And that's what I'm asking. We should have planned ahead of time, and the staff should have said, if we go for this grant, you can't do X, Y, and Z in the city. We don't have that information tonight. We've been asking, I think. No one can give us that answer. If we say yes to this, what we're not going to be able to do. That is my issue.
Alderman Rainey's next, and then the city manager.
Is there a deadline for this grant? I'm sure there is. What is it?
The 31st.
Of October?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
City manager.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, we could certainly come back with that list. The reason we're here this evening is, as often happens, a member of the city council approaches staff and asks us to reconsider something. And this is something that Alderman Braithwaite, who was not a part of the original Tiger grant process last year, we had previously decided that it probably didn't make sense to go after this again. Because of the sheer volume, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of applications that were done, and the federal government has said, well, we liked all of them so much, we're going to leave all the Tiger 2 applications just where they were, and if you communities want to submit some more, that's fine. And from our perspective as staff, that seemed like a pretty daunting process. However, Alderman Braithwaite, upon learning about all of this, said, yes, it seems like a daunting process, staff, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't try it anyway. So this was not in our plan as we've been working on the CIP to do this. Alderman Braithwaite came to us once learning about the project, learning about the opportunity, and said, please, staff, would you bring this forward? And so that is why we're here this evening. The deadline's the 31st. You have another meeting a week from now. If the council would like us to come up with very specifics, if you choose to do this, this is the recommendations of things that would come out of the proposed CIP for 12. We'd be happy to do that. But this is a matter of changing priorities. We've talked several occasions tonight about changing priorities. A member of the City Council said, I want to change a priority, came to staff, and that is why it's on the agenda this evening.
Thank you. So do we want to wait until the next meeting and see the list of what we won't have as a result, or do you want to proceed tonight?
I think we should come to the next meeting. Also, the agenda indicated this matter was for discussion in any event, so it wasn't marked as an action item, I don't think.
Authorize the city manager to apply.
So it's for discussion.
That's a typo. So it's up to the council. The council's discretion, the action described is pretty clear. It's just the summary line at the bottom. So again, that's your perception, how you'd like. It was certainly our intention for action, given that it says staff recommends authorization for the city manager to apply. So the shorthand at the bottom was a typo.
Alderman Nguyen?
Despite the fact that I am very interested in the project, I do think that we need more information and before we make a decision. So I think that since we know the deadline is October 31st, and we have the opportunity to take another meeting to discuss this and understand better what the choices are that we would be making by choosing this, I agree with Alderman Wilson, and I think that we should hold this over.
Alderman Rainey?
Well, I would like to move that it's a special order of business at our next meeting because I don't want it to slip past us.
Yes.
All right. Is that all right with everyone? Sorry, I think I'm losing my voice to allergies. All right. And we're not going to do plastic bags. So, Alderman Wilson, do you have?
I'm sorry. Before we go, the agenda from next Monday, which was kind of light, now is a lot less light. So, just so I understand, we will have a special order of business on the water main replacement and street resurfacing program, on the Tiger 3 grants, and on the disposable bag presentation. This will be in addition to a meeting of the Township Board on issues from previous meetings there. And just to make you aware of that. So I think it's doable. We'll make other adjustments as we need to, but we're also going to talk about Commonwealth Edison next steps as well, which will also be a little while. So we're prepared to do all that. We just want to make you aware.
Thank you. Madam Mayor.
Alderman Rainey.
Beg your pardon. I would like to know why the water main replacement and street resurfacing program is not an Administration and Public Works item. Why is it a special order of business?
It was for this evening because of the citywide concern. We can certainly put it on.
We deal with garbage and all sorts of citywide concerns. I think it belongs in the Administration Public Works agenda. And that way it can be fleshed out during our committee meeting, and any alderman who has a concern ought to be at that meeting.
Unless
I just don't understand why something like this is not on AMPW.
And Alderman Rainey, it's no more mystical than we're just trying to manage your time so that when we get to 11 o'clock at night, week after week after week.
No, I understand why it was tonight a special order, but for our regular meeting, since it's being held over, just
and that's fine. If there's no objection from the other members of the council, just put it on AMPW.
Why would it?
I think so.
Alderman Nguyen?
Oh, you already called on me,
Mayor. All right. I never turned your light off. I think I am definitely. Yes, Alderman Wilson.
Pursuant to 5 Illinois compiled statutes, ILCS 120/2A, I move that the City Council convene into executive session to discuss agenda items regarding personnel, collective bargaining, litigation, and minutes. These agenda items are permitted subjects to be considered in executive session, and are enumerated exceptions under the Open Meetings Act. These exceptions are 5 ILCS 122A, C1, C2, C11, and C21.
City Clerk?
Alderman Braithwaite. Yeah. Alderman Nguyen. Alderman Wilson.
Aye.
Alderman Holmes.
Aye.
Alderman Tindem. Alderman Grover. Alderman Rainey. Alderman Burrus. Alderman Fisk. 9-0, 1044.
The motion passes. Thank you, Alderman Wilson.